Chapter 491. It was as if Fatty was meeting Shining for the first time. He scanned her from head to toe in disbelief. Was Miss Shin so powerful? As if sensing his gaze, Shining suddenly turned around and handed something over to him. With a serious expression she asked, "Do you want some fruit?" Fatty paused. He looked at the fruit in her hand that was obviously bitten off. Why was she asking him to eat fruit again? Wait, could it be that she despised the fact that the beast had just spat on the fruit? Was that why she wanted to give it to him? No. Miss Shun was definitely not that kind of person. She must have seen that he was frightened, so she gave it to him to calm him down. She only gave him half of it, because there was only one left. That must be it. No need. Thank you, Miss Shun. Fatty shook his head. Oh. Shining retracted her hand with a look of disappointment. Then, she threw it away, took out a new one, and continued to chew on it. Fatty. He felt as if he had been stabbed somewhere. It hurt. Where are we? Shining asked. We should be underwater, Lone Moon replied casually. Then, he took out a pearl, and their surroundings lit up. It was not just the few of them. Everything around them lit up. It was only then that the Fatty discovered that they were indeed at the bottom of the water. They were surrounded by a bubble-like spirit formation. Lone Moon must have set up this array the moment they fell into the water. The bottom of the water was desolate. Apart from a trembling beast, there was nothing else. This place was not big. It was only a few 100 feet away. They could see the end of it at a glance. It looked like a body of water that had been specially created. Lone Moon controlled the barrier and brought the few of them to the bottom of the water. They looked around, but did not find anything special. Master. Fatty looked at Lone Moon, who seemed to be looking for something. He could not help but ask, "When did you find out that Chanji was lying to us?" Looking at how calm they were just now, it was obvious that they knew Chanji's motive and came here on purpose. Lone Moon glanced at him and replied, "From the moment they told me that the beast in the seal was the sorrowful beast." Wasn't that right from the beginning? Chanji acted like he did not want to implicate us. Yet he did not hide the fact that the beast was sealed. Lone Moon snorted. He said he would send us away, yet he made it so clear about the seal. Isn't he obviously trying to drag us down with him? Even the disciple who said he would bring them down the mountain was brought here after Lone Moon had said a few words. It was obvious that it had been arranged from the very beginning. Did they think that he couldn't see through this trick of loosening the reins only to grasp them better? He kept saying that the seal was unstable a few months ago, but we only arrived at Howran Court a month ago. If he really didn't want to implicate us, why did he suggest for us to come here? Chanji to the sorrowful, Chan Long as he said Chanji and Dao. Time as he Chan Xiao and time as well. Time as, tu. Sorrowful beast could destroy a small world. But this did not include the sorrowful beast. Chef had told him that the sorrowful beast was an earth beast. Earth beasts were connected to the earth veins of their habitat. Earth beasts could not leave their habitat. In other words, the sorrowful beast was a shut-in beast. Unless it was in danger, it would not come out. Others might not know about this, but Chef, who had inherited the divine heritage, knew it very well. This way, it was obvious that they were talking about the seal array. They were trying to lure them into the array. But, I have no enmity with Howran Court. Why would they do this? Fatty still could not understand. Lone Moon scanned him from head to toe. What else could it be? Fatty paused and pointed at himself. Me? Do we have any other Tripiakas meat here? What was Tripiakas meat? But they are Buddhist cultivators? Fatty's eyes widened in disbelief. We can't be sure if they are real Buddhist cultivators. Lone Moon frowned. They must have other motives for locking us here. Let's find out what else is here apart from the beast. So the few of them looked around, but still did not find anything special. Chef, did you find anything? I Ching shook his head. We can see everything here at one glance. There's nothing strange. That's strange. Lone Moon frowned. Why did they put in so much effort to lock us in here? Maybe they don't want to do anything. Shining suddenly said. The two of them paused and then reacted. That's right. Those people did not know what they were capable of. At most, they would think that they were soul formation cultivators. Under normal circumstances, if they came in and there was a beast inside, it was most likely that, at that moment, 3 pairs of eyes looked down at the beast below. The beast, whose head was still stuck in the crack, was shocked, and shook even more violently. Meow meow meow. The corner of Loneman's mouth twitched. He raised his hand and conjured a chain. He tied the beast up and pulled hard. Only then did Weeping Beast come out. The ferocious beast, which had finally managed to escape, looked up at them weakly. More accurately, it looked at Shining, and its whole body trembled. Meow, it cried out. It turned and lowered its head. Then it stuffed its head back in. This time it was not stuck. Its whole head was in the crack. Only a ball of black chi was left outside. It shook so hard that it looked like it was going to fall apart. Lone Moon. I Ching. Fatty. How timid was it? It's just a slap, that's all. Lone Moon had no choice but to pull it out again. He even conjured an earth elemental spell to fill up the crack in the ground. Weeping Beast had nowhere to hide. It turned around in a panic. Finally, its eyes rolled back and it fell to the ground motionless. It pretended to be dead. The 3 of them. They gave it 0 points for pretending to be dead. Did it think they were blind? Lone Moon sighed and did not care about it anymore. If Chanji and the others' goal was Fatty's flesh and blood, then it doesn't make sense for them to send him in. Weeping Beast liked to eat flesh and blood too. What good would it do them if Fatty was eaten? Lone Moon looked at the cowardly beast. Unless there's something special about Weeping Beast. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something. He turned to I Ching and said, "Chef, throw the beast in your storage bag to Weeping Beast." The master and disciple pair turned to look at him, and sent a wave of resentment. Shining. That has to be eaten. I Ching, that's master's. All right, I'll pay for your food. Chapter 492. I Ching glanced at Shining, then hesitantly opened his storage bag. After searching around for a long time, he finally took out a fish that weighed more than 10 kilograms and handed it over. Here. This was the smallest he had. Lone Moon turned and threw it at the beast below. Perhaps it was too afraid. Sichi did not move at all. It continued to lie on the ground, pretending to be dead. "Chef, bring Shining further away," Lone Moon said. Only then did I Ching conjure a seal to create a bubble circle. He brought his master along and swam further away. After a while, Sichi finally moved. A small part of its body, which was made up of black yin chi, carefully moved towards the fish beside it, as if to make sure that no one was stopping it. Only then did he straighten his body and pounce towards the fish with lightning speed. The black aura on its body dispersed and wrapped around the fish. Not long after, he spat out another complete fish bone from his mouth. Lone Moon paused. It doesn't eat bones. By right, this beast, which was made up of yin chi, should be able to digest anything. What's more, whether it was a demon or a human cultivator, bones contain more spirit energy than flesh and blood. Yet Sichi did not eat them. Could it be that Chanji and the others' goal was? Just as he was thinking about it, Sichi flipped over once again and began to play dead. There seems to be something on its stomach. Fatty suddenly pointed downwards. Lone Moon took a closer look. Indeed, there seemed to be something drawn on Sichi's stomach. He did not notice it because of the heavy yin chi earlier. Now there seemed to be a faint white light. He called Chef back and flew down to take a closer look. This is an array formation. Between the heavy black chi, there was indeed an array formation. It was glowing faintly, as if it had just been activated. The more Sichi trembled, the brighter the array formation became. It looks like a transportation array, I Ching said. Just as he finished speaking, there was a flash of white light. Something flew into the array formation. Lone Moon turned back and saw that the fish bone on the ground had disappeared. Chanji and the others' goal was indeed Fatty's corpse. Lone Moon's heart sank. He looked up at the group. "Let's go into the array." He made a hand seal and activated the teleportation formation on Weeping's body. In an instant, a bright white light enveloped the 4 of them. In the next moment, their figures flashed and they instantly appeared in another body of water. Compared to the darkness of the Weeping Beast, this place was the complete opposite. Golden light shone everywhere, and it was even a little dazzling. Large patches of golden light lit up below, as if the entire body of water had turned golden. He looked down and saw something emitting a golden light. This light was very strange. It was not aggressive at all. Instead, it was warm. Was this the light of merit? Lone Moon paused and subconsciously descended. What he saw shocked them so much that they sucked in a breath of cold air. Bones. There were corpses all over the ground, covering the entire bottom of the water, so dense that there was not a single gap. At first glance, there were hundreds of corpses. Some of them seemed to be eternally old, with half of their bodies submerged in the mud. Some of the skeletons were completely exposed, but they were not complete. There were even some skeletons with obvious signs of fracture. However, all of these skeletons were emitting a faint golden light. All of the light at the bottom of the water came from them. For a moment, the few of them were stunned, and did not speak for a long time. Until Fatty murmured, "These are golden bodies, golden bodies." His face suddenly paled, and he began to breathe heavily, as if he had been hit by something. His eyes were listless. "Fatty." Lone Moon paused and then regained his senses. "What's wrong with you? Why are you suddenly? Wait, why are you crying?" "Crying?" Fatty was stunned. He wiped his face and realized that he did not know when his face was covered in tears. His expression was blank, but his face became even paler. "Yes, why am I crying? What's wrong with me? Master." Hey, Fatty, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me." He really looked too abnormal. I don't know." Fatty cried even harder, but his tears could not be stopped. They flowed more and more. He seemed to be unable to bear it and squatted down. "I don't know. I'm just... Miss Shun, why am I?" He subconsciously looked toward Shining, only to feel a strange emotion welling up in his heart. It was so heavy that he almost could not breathe. For some reason, he just wanted to cry at Shining. He also did not know why he looked for her, but he could not help it. "Shun. Miss Shun, I. He looked like he wanted to say something, but could not say it. Shining looked straight at him, her eyes darkening. Suddenly, she reached out and touched the top of his head. "I already know." Fatty was stunned. He only felt a trace of warmth coming from the top of his head. Only then did his chaotic thoughts calm down. The strange emotion in the bottom of his heart also dissipated. In the next moment, he slowly closed his eyes and fainted. "What's going on?" Lone Moon reflexively helped Fatty up. "What's wrong with Fatty?" Shining did not speak. Even I Ching's expression darkened at the side, with a hint of anger. "Chef." He could only look at I Ching. I Ching clenched his fists by his side, then said, "Father Nio, a few days ago on an island near Haoran Court, I found many similar spirit herbs." "What spirit herbs?" Lone Moon was stunned. He did not understand why he suddenly said this. "Soul-nourishing grass." "Soul-nourishing." Lone Moon's eyes widened. "You mean those elixirs with soul-guiding powder in them came from Haoran Court?" "Yes." I Ching nodded. "The uncrouped sea is full of yin qi. It is the most suitable place for soul-nourishing grass to grow, and the nearby islands are full of this kind of spirit herb. So only they could bear to add soul-guiding powder to ordinary elixirs, and only they had it. But what has this got to do with Fatty?" I Ching's expression darkened. "Father Nio, do you remember what happened to the cultivator that Master and I met? That cultivator was not a reincarnated." Lone Moon stopped mid-sentence. He suddenly thought of something. His face paled instantly. He turned to look at Fatty in disbelief. "After that cultivator ate that elixir, he was immediately reincarnated," I Ching continued. "The elixir naturally does not have such an effect. It only left a mark on his primordial spirit. Someone found this mark, and directly reincarnated him into this small world. Cultivators in the lower realm naturally do not have this ability, but Haoran Court has an earth immortal." I Ching's expression darkened. "As someone from the immortal realm, he naturally has a way to interfere with reincarnation, together with the soul-nourishing grass. It is not hard to guess who the person who reincarnated that cultivator into the same small world was. That elixir with soul-guiding powder only left a mark, so that the people of Haoran Court could more easily find his soul. And Fatty." Chapter 493. I Ching looked down at Fatty, who had already fainted, and directly conjured a seal. A stream of spirit chi instantly swept towards his primordial spirit, and in no time, a red mark slowly floated above Fatty's head. How Ran Court and Divine Imperial Sect are in cahoots. Fatty was already imprinted long ago. I Ching let out a long sigh and said, they racked their brains to transfer Fatty's corpse here, not wanting Fatty's soul to reincarnate into other small worlds. And in addition, rumor has it that the previous sect masters of Divine Imperial Sect were born weak and could not live past 30. All these added together, it's obvious. I Ching looked down at the surrounding bones and said word by word, it's not Fatty's first time being the sect master of Divine Imperial Sect, and these bones are all Fatty. The Fatty who would be stripped of his flesh and blood by those cultivators in every lifetime for ascension. And even his bones would be squeezed out of him, to the last bit of merit. That's why when he arrived here, he suddenly became so abnormal, so agitated, because every piece of bone at the bottom of the water was all him. Because of his special flesh and blood, he was a golden body of merit in every lifetime. That's why in every lifetime he reincarnated in this small world. He died in the hands of those cultivators. For the so-called cultivation, they used him completely. They even left imprints on his primordial spirit, controlling all his reincarnations, and kept him in Divine Imperial Sect, like a pig waiting to be slaughtered. He couldn't help but cry to Shining. But it was just complaining, an injustice that even the heavenly Tao couldn't sue. He could only complain to Shining. Shit! Lone Moon shouted, a never-before-felt anger rising from the bottom of his heart. These bastards! Instantly, the sword chi on his body burst out uncontrollably, sweeping towards the entire bottom of the water like a sharp blade. And in an instant, all the bones on the ground were turned into ashes. The soaring sword chi broke out of the water, and the water that was originally more than 10 meters deep instantly evaporated. Lone Moon's figure flashed, and he was already flying up into the sky. I Ching subconsciously summoned his sword, wanting to follow and help. Chef. Shining suddenly tugged at him. When adults do things, we children shouldn't interfere. With that said, she pointed to the person at her feet. Take Fatty, we'll just watch. If you leave, no one will carry Fatty. Yes, master. I Ching sheathed his sword without hesitation. He picked up Fatty, who weighed more than 150 kilograms, and directly flew out of the completely dry water. When they flew up, they found out that they were in the huge lotus pond at the back mountain of How Ran Court. Sure enough, the thick stench of blood and killing intent he smelled in this place was not wrong at all. Speaking of which, it was quite ironic. A group of Buddhist cultivators who focused on cultivating merit actually all had their cultivation base from the corpses of those who died wrongfully in this pool. The commotion here naturally alerted the people of How Ran Court. In less than 10 breaths' time, Chanji led the group of cultivators out. When he saw Lone Moon in the sky, he was shocked and his face was filled with disbelief. You? How could you? Chanji's eyes widened. That's impossible. Humph. Lone Moon sneered. Are you surprised that you didn't get eaten by the beast as you wished? Don't worry, you'll be even more surprised. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned his hand and a sky full of spiritual swords instantly appeared. They densely occupied the entire sky and set up a sky full of swords. With a completely irresistible pressure, they blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Chanji's legs trembled. He lost his balance and fell from the sky. The other cultivators around him were the same. They were so suppressed that they could not even lift their heads. Who exactly are you? Chanji looked at the person in the sky in shock. The kind mask on his face was long gone. In fact, there was a vicious look on his face. This kind of power could not belong to an ordinary cultivator. Suddenly, he thought of something and widened his eyes. Could this person be someone from the upper realm? Who am I? I'm Fatty's master. Lone Moon's eyes turned cold. I'm not much of a person. I'm just very protective. Although he's a fatty, it's not your place to bully him. As he spoke, an even more powerful force descended. The people below could not withstand it. They felt their blood boil and spat out blood. Ayaya. Shuning clicked her tongue in an exaggerated manner. She looked up at the furious Father Nyo and said, Father Nyo really treats Fatty differently. I Ching paused and hurriedly said, Master is right. Chanji could not hold on any longer. Just as his divine perception was about to be crushed by the suppressive force, a figure suddenly flew up from the mountain peak. Heretic cultivator, don't you dare be so arrogant. The patriarch of Haoran Court, Earth Immortal Jingda, rushed out and threw the Dharma artifact in his hand at Lone Moon. Instantly, a huge green umbrella appeared in the sky. It grew 10 times bigger and emitted a white light. It attacked Lone Moon. Immortal artifact? Lone Moon paused. He recognized that this was the umbrella that Divine Imperial Sect had taken out twice. They were indeed jackals of the same tribe. The anger in Lone Moon's heart rose once again. He waved the sword in his hand. An array of sword chi flew towards the umbrella. You think you can defeat me? Before Jingda could finish his sentence, the umbrella was cut in half by the sword. All the immortal chi disappeared, and the umbrella fell to the ground. Lone Moon had not liked this umbrella for a long time. It was clearly a piece of trash. How many times had it appeared? Jingda's eyes widened in disbelief. His immortal artifact was immediately hit by a huge pain in his chest. The backlash from the destruction of his Dharma artifact hit him. His chi and blood flowed in reverse, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He could not even fly his sword, and fell to the ground with Chanji and the others. What kind of trash dares to call itself an immortal artifact? Lone Moon's mocking mode was on full display. I'll show you what a real immortal artifact is. With that said, he turned his hand, and a huge golden bell appeared in his hand. It grew bigger instantly. I Ching, who was watching the show from below, stiffened. Frowning, he asked, Master, Father Nyo's is a divine artifact, right? This was obviously the divine refining bell, one of the 10 great divine artifacts. Although this was obviously a replica that Father Nyo had Sun Shu make, it was still a divine artifact. Shening patted his shoulder. Hey, if Father Nyo says it's an immortal artifact, then it is an immortal artifact, right? Master is right. That is an immortal artifact. Fatty, who had just woken up. The divine refining bell had already fallen. I Ching hurriedly brought his master and the 150-kilogram Fatty out of Haoran Court. They hid further away. In the next moment, there was a series of rumbling sounds. Under the immense pressure, a large portion of the originally magnificent palace collapsed. The entire mountain of Haoran Court began to collapse, falling into the sea below, as if it was falling apart. Just as Chanji and the others were about to be crushed under the bell, a golden light flashed. The falling divine refining bell suddenly stopped in midair. Chapter 494. Lone Moon frowned. He saw that the golden light was coming from the people of Haoran Court. The cultivators paused, then a look of joy appeared on their faces. It's the light of merit. We have merit on us. Heretic cultivator, don't even think about hurting us. Merit. Lone Moon immediately thought of the pool of corpses. The anger in his heart grew. Stealing merit counts as merit? He turned his hand and used his assistant's ability. Suddenly, the golden light on everyone's bodies turned into thousands of golden spots that flew into Lone Moon's palm and turned into a golden ball. Lone Moon glanced at it. The golden ball flashed twice and disappeared. He then looked up at a certain spot in the sky. Don't give this kind of thing to people randomly. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the sky. As if responding to him, there was an inexplicable sense of grievance. And the people below who had lost their merit seemed to have torn off some kind of disguise. Suddenly, ugly black lines started to crawl all over their bodies. This was a sign that they were turning into demons. How is this possible? Chanji's eyes widened. That person looked like a cultivator. How could he take away their merit so easily? His face was full of fear. He thought of something and shouted to Jingda. Patriarch, he's from the upper realm. He must be from the upper realm. Quick, get the immortal supremacy. Jingda paused. Then his eyes lit up. He seemed to have reacted. He hurriedly took out a purple talisman and forced himself to inject the last bit of spirit energy into it. He shouted, I beg the immortal supremacy to descend and protect the disciples of Haoran Court. The other disciples followed suit and shouted, I beg the immortal supremacy to descend and protect the disciples of Hao Ran Court. Lone Moon, who was about to continue activating the divine refining bell, paused. From the looks of it, Fatty's matter had something to do with the immortal realm? With a thought, he kept the bell. All right. He waited to see which bastard from the immortal realm it was. Chef Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit, suddenly said, "Open the realm gate." Master? I Ching was confused. But this realm gate is locked by the heavenly Tao. If we force it open, you can open it now. I Ching paused, then seemed to think of something and nodded. Yes, master. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. With just a thought, the nomological power that was locking the realm gate up above instantly dispersed, and the realm gate opened. Almost at the instant the realm gate returned to normal, a ray of heavenly light shone down from the sky. It was as if a door had opened up in the sky. The celestial chi that filled the sky immediately surged into this small world. In an instant, even the half-collapsed Hao Ran Court spirit plants began to grow wildly, covering the entire ruins. It's the immortal venerable. The immortal venerable has arrived. A severely injured disciple cried out in surprise. He looked at the light in the sky excitedly, and the fear in his heart was swept away. Even Changji and Jingda looked excited, as if they were about to make a comeback. At the same time, an ethereal voice came from the sky. Who dares to bully my disciples and granddisciples? Loman's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he felt that he had hit them too lightly just now. He should let them know what it meant to feel fear from the bottom of the cultivation world. The light in the sky grew brighter and brighter. A moment later, a figure with immortal chi appeared in the sky, hidden among the clouds. Accompanied by the heavenly voice, the figure floated down slowly. Loman's mouth twitched. He was getting impatient from waiting. He could not help but scold. What are you waiting for? If you want to come down, then come down. Why are you playing background music for yourself? With that said, he activated the sword array in the sky and threw it towards the sky. In an instant, the sword array wrapped around the foot that had just appeared in the sky and pulled it down. Aya, the so-called immortal supremacy, in the sky suddenly fell like a kite with a broken string, crashing onto the ground. And you guys? Lone Moon continued to look up at the sky. If you want to come down, then come down together. With that, the sword array in the sky surged into the entrance of the sky. The next moment, the sky seemed to be filled with dumplings. Dong dong dong, one after another, a series of people fell from the sky, crashing into the group of old and weak people in Hao Ran Court. Some of them could not dodge in time, and were hit squarely. Changji, Jingda, everyone. What was going on? What just happened? How dare you? Among the immortals who were pulled down for no reason, the one with the highest cultivation level immediately regained his composure. Immortal chi exploded from his body. Who dares to plot against me? Yo, an acquaintance. I didn't expect. Lone Moon flew down and looked at the immortal who had just spoken. Country Emperor Yutsong, long time no see. The person who had come was the Emperor of East Sui, Yutsong, who had gone to Invincible Sect to report that something was wrong in the lower realm. Lone Moon did not expect that he would interfere in Fatty's matter. He suddenly remembered the sudden rise of East Sui in the Bo Sea. Now it seemed that the chaos in the rules of this small world was caused by them. More than half of the cultivators from East Sui, who had ascended from this small world, were probably related to Fatty's many past lives. Young Emperor, Lone Moon. Yutsong paused. His face paled as he recognized the person in front of him. Instinctively, he looked around and found I Ching standing nearby. Celestial Emperor I Ching. How is this possible? The realm gate just... Did you just open it? Lone Moon's expression darkened. Yutsong, do you think we don't know why the realm gate was closed? Yutsong lowered his head. A hint of panic flashed across his eyes. The people of this small world do not follow the right path. They use the blood and flesh of others as sacrifices to increase their cultivation level. They are delusional enough to hide from the heavens and cause the realm gate to close. Lone Moon scanned the people from Hao Ran Court, then looked at Yutsong and the others. If I'm not wrong, there are many immortal cultivators from East Sui who used this method to ascend. Yu Tsong's expression changed, but he forced a smile. Young Emperor Lone Moon, what are you talking about? We came to the lower realm today, because the realm gate suddenly opened. We wanted to find out what was going on. What blood and flesh sacrificed to hide from the heavens? I don't know. Does country emperor, you really think that we don't know anything? Did these people ask their own immortal supremacies to open the heavenly gate just now? I do have subordinates who are Buddhist cultivators from this sect. But that has nothing to do with me. I have no idea what they are doing in the lower realm. Yu Tsong still refused to admit it. He looked at I Ching in the distance with some fear. Young Emperor Lone Moon, please don't accuse innocent people in front of the Celestial Emperor. Is that so? Lone Moon could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He waved his hand, and an unfamiliar yet irresistible suppressive force swept towards them. Yu Tsong instinctively put up a defensive stance. But the suppressive force was not aggressive. The next moment, the immortal qi on their bodies dissipated. Then, the immortals who had just come to the lower realm emitted a faint golden light of merit. It was the same as the one on Changji and the others. His heart sank. His face turned pale. How could this be? He had tried his best to get rid of it. How could it appear again? Country Emperor Yu, may I ask, where did the thick golden light of merit on your body come from? I was a Buddhist cultivator when I was in the lower realm. Yu Tsong's expression was completely messed up. He braced himself and said, that's right. I changed my cultivation after that. Can't I? Of course you can change your cultivation. Lone Moon laughed coldly. But are the subordinates behind you going to change their cultivation like you? What a coincidence. Chapter 495. Yu Tsong was stumped by him, and his expression darkened. His gaze towards Lone Moon already carried a hint of hatred, as if he had predicted that today's matter would not end peacefully. He changed his flustered look from earlier and glared at him, saying, Young Lord Lone Moon's action, are you going to stand up for someone else? I just can't stand you vermin, disturbing the order of this world. What order? Yu Tsong laughed coldly. Why can't I have a more effective way of ascending when I have the opportunity at the sacred arrival realm? It's all cultivation. Is it wrong just because we are faster and easier? The method you're talking about is to conspire with the cultivators of the lower realm, to sacrifice someone alive, and use the primordial spirit imprint to imprison him for eternity. How could such a person be worthy of being an immortal? Why can't we? Yu Tsong retorted loudly. Not just him, the people behind him, including the people of Haoran Court, all looked as if it was a matter of course. Sacrificing him alone can help all of us achieve the great Tao. Why not do such a deal? If you want to blame someone, blame him. Why does he always have such a special constitution, born with a special body and spirit bones? And even his bones can emit merit. The more he spoke, the louder and more confident he became. He has such a special constitution, because of the heavenly Tao. Then we should use his flesh and blood to ascend. That should be our opportunity. The fact that we can successfully ascend to the upper realm is the best proof. This is the will of the heavens. What right do you have to say that it's our fault? The moment he finished speaking, the others echoed, feeling that they were making more and more sense. That's right. He was born with such a constitution, he should be food for others. A special body and spirit bones. Such a heaven-defying constitution should not appear in a human. That's right. He actually has the body of a special treasure. Of course, he only has the fate of a special treasure. Spirit plants and plants can all be used as immortal ascension materials. Why can't he? The more they spoke, the more outrageous they became. They no longer treated Fatty as a person, but as an object, a spirit plant. Fatty, who had just woken up, paled as he listened. His whole body began to tremble. His body swayed, and he almost lost his balance. Shening helped him up. After some thought, she suddenly tilted her head and said, You're a human. Don't bother with small animals. Fatty was stunned for a moment, not understanding what she meant. Chef then explained, What Master means is that those are not fit to be called humans, they are just beasts. Fatty was stunned. A trace of warmth flowed from the bottom of his heart. melting away the chill that had just risen in his heart. In fact, when he saw the corpses in the lotus pond, he had already sensed that they were his. Although he didn't have the memories of his past life, from what they said, he knew how he died. These were clearly high and mighty immortals who had skinned him alive so many times. How could they still be so bold and righteous, criticizing him for having such a body? Why didn't they feel the slightest burden in their hearts? They didn't even feel that it was wrong. But what did he do wrong? Was it because he had a special body? He couldn't help but think that if he hadn't met his master and Miss Shun in this life, he would still have become the material for immortal ascension that they spoke of. He wouldn't even be worthy to be called a person, right? He couldn't figure out why there was such a person in the world. Subconsciously, he moved a few steps behind Shining. Fortunately, there were still people who were different. On the other side, Chef glanced at him and frowned, but didn't stop his actions in the end. Young Emperor Lone Moon. We even passed the heavenly tribulation of ascension. That proves that there is nothing wrong with our method. Yu Tsong seemed to have found his courage. He even glanced at I Ching in the distance. Something that even the heavenly Tao doesn't care about is. Who said that the heavenly Tao doesn't care? Lone Moon's expression turned cold. He interrupted him directly. Do you really think that the heavenly Tao will be so blind to let you off after the disgusting and immoral things you have done? What do you mean? Yu Tsong was stunned. A trace of panic flashed across his eyes. But he felt that Lone Moon was bluffing. After all, Celestial Emperor I Ching didn't speak from the beginning to the end. He probably didn't want to interfere with mortal affairs. As long as he didn't come out, and it was just young Emperor Lone Moon alone, he might not be afraid. Didn't you suspect the heavenly Tao? Lone Moon's smile became even colder. This group of people had completely disgusted him. Then I'll let you see what heavenly punishment is. Damn it. If he didn't beat them up until they couldn't take care of themselves, his surname wasn't Nyo. He couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with them. He raised his hand. Instantly, a familiar pressure went towards them. Before Yu Tsong and the rest could react, they felt their bodies lighten. It was as if something was pulled out from their bodies. Looking closely, they saw that the golden light that was originally wrapped around them had all turned into spots of light. They floated towards Lone Moon and then disappeared. Yu Tsong was shocked. Those merit came from the flesh and blood of that special person in the previous life. After they ascended, they tried all kinds of methods, but to no avail. They could only hide it. They didn't expect Lone Moon to take it away so easily. Although merit was useful, in the upper realm, so many of them had the golden light of merit. It was indeed too eye-catching. Now that it was gone, it was to his liking. Although he didn't know what Lone Moon's goal was, he couldn't help but feel ecstatic. But the next moment his heart sank again. Lone Moon directly summoned the sword array that filled the sky. Only this time, it wasn't the sword array that was condensed from spirit chi. Instead, it was immortal chi. There was a fire in his heart. He didn't plan to hold back. In an instant, the entire heaven and earth was filled with sharp sword chi. Young Emperor Lone Moon is forcing us to make a move? Yu Tsong's face darkened. He totally didn't think much of Lone Moon. The people behind him exchanged glances. One by one, they summoned their Dharma artifacts and directly flew over. Lone Moon snorted. With a turn of his hand, the fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly stopped. What are you doing? He raised his head to look at the sky. What was wrapped around his hand was the power of the rule. At the same time, the surroundings darkened. Large patches of thunder clouds suddenly appeared strangely in the sky. Layers and layers of thunder clouds suddenly appeared in the sky. Not a single ray of light could be seen. Between the layers of clouds, lightning of various colors flashed continuously. It brought with it a terrifying coercion of heaven and earth. Yu Tsong and the rest were stunned. They were shocked by the sudden appearance of the lightning tribulation that covered the entire sky. They stopped in midair and didn't dare to move. The coercion of heaven and earth above the clouds was really too terrifying. It was as if it was going to destroy heaven and earth. Even Yu Tsong had the urge to kneel down and worship under this kind of pressure. But this was a different scene in Lone Moon's eyes. There was no coercion of heaven and earth at all. Instead, From the layers of thunder clouds, he felt a trace of excitement. Even the power of the rule wrapped around his hand became exceptionally lively. It was as if there was a tiny voice constantly pleading in his ear. Let me do it, let me do it, let me do it. Let me kill them. Chapter 496. The corner of Loman's mouth twitched. Alright, the heavenly Tao had tolerated it for a long time. Looks like I don't have to do anything. So he kept the sword array and scanned the crowd below. Alright, I'll see how the heavenly Tao takes care of you vermin. With that said, he turned and flew back in the direction of Xin Ying and the others. He squeezed into Chef's boundary, took out a chair and sat down. Almost at the same time that Lone Moon sat down, the realm gate that had just been opened closed with a snap. The thunder clouds in the sky became even thicker. This is the heavenly tribulation. Everyone looked incredulous. Why would the heavenly tribulation suddenly appear? None of them had ascended. Moreover, this was the mortal realm. They were people of the immortal realm. Why would the heavenly tribulation of immortals appear in the mortal realm? Unfortunately, such a thing did happen. The thunder clouds were tens of times more severe than any heavenly tribulation. Finally, with a loud boom, tens of lightning of different colors descended from the sky at the same time, striking down on the crowd below. Yu Tsong and the others tried their best to resist, but to no avail. Even the best immortal weapons were shattered by the heavenly tribulation. Just one strike was enough to shatter their meridians and cause their cultivation to regress. Before they could react, the next lightning struck down, as if it couldn't wait any longer. Now they finally understood why Lone Moon wanted to take away their merit. Unfortunately, it was too late. The lightning struck down one after another, as if it would never stop. The thunder in the sky became more and more frequent. At first there were red, purple, white, and all kinds of lightning. Even some that should not have appeared in the heavenly tribulation appeared. The lightning pressure around them was so thick that it was hard to breathe. Slowly the lightning became smaller. However, it wasn't that the heavenly Tao let these people off. It was purposely reducing the lightning tribulation. Like a soft knife cutting flesh, it struck slowly. Yet because of the first few lightning strikes, Yu Tsong and the others had no strength to resist. They could only let the lightning slowly disperse the little immortal force left in their bodies. Loman's mouth twitched. How much did they hate these people? Even the unconscious heavenly Tao was angered to the point of using such a despicable move. Moreover, this lightning tribulation had been striking for too long. One strike had lasted for several months. At first, they were watching with great interest, but as time went on, they became annoyed. It wasn't until 3 months later that the thunderclouds in the sky slowly dispersed, and the once majestic Hao Ran court had been flattened. The entire mountain was only left with a small layer of the sea, and it wasn't even as big as the nearby islands. As for the original disciples, other than a few disciples with especially low cultivation bases who survived, including Yu Tsong and the rest, they all turned into that thick layer of dust on the ground. I Ching sensed for a moment before saying, "The nomological power of this small world has already recovered by half." Why is it only half? Lone Moon stared blankly for a moment, and then he realized that the nomological power that had just disappeared here was surging towards the north in large swathes, beginning to gather into thunderclouds. His eyes lit up instantly. Those tribulation clouds are floating towards Divine Imperial Sect. Indeed, the heavenly Tao remembered every debt clearly, and had already gone to collect it. Come, let's go to Divine Imperial Sect to watch the show. But, Fatty pointed at the sea ahead hesitantly. What about that ferocious beast? Although Weeping Beast was a shut-in beast, it was still an ancient ferocious beast. Lone Moon frowned. This was indeed a problem. That beastie still had to be dealt with. I think we don't have to care about it, Chef suddenly said. Although Weeping Beast likes to eat flesh and blood, it was originally a ferocious beast with Yin Qi as its soul, Blood Qi as its spirit, and Turbid Grievous Qi as its bones. Now that Hao Ran Court is gone, the corpses that filled the lotus pond have also disappeared. It won't be long before the Yin Qi astral winds on the uncrouped sea dissipate, and Weeping Beast will naturally disappear as well. Lone Moon stared blankly. You mean, The yin qi on the sea came from that lotus pond. I Ching nodded. Shit. Lone Moon couldn't help but scold that bunch of scum from How Ran Court again. Indeed, they skinned a person alive so many times, and even piled the corpse at the bottom of the pond. It would be strange if it didn't generate grievous qi. What's more, the corpse could not be buried, and emitted yin qi all year round, causing the entire sea region to be bewildered. Weeping Beast did not suddenly appear, but was born from the yin qi. And the reason why the nomological powers of this world were in chaos was also very clear. Yutsong and the others used the flesh and blood of Fatty's many previous lives as sacrifices, causing the heavenly Tao to mistakenly think that they were Fatty, and to raise their cultivation and ascend to the immortal realm. By the time the heavenly Tao realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. What's more, the heavenly Tao did not have sentience. At most it was a super calculator that specialized in recording the rewards and punishments of living beings. After such a number of times, it naturally froze. In a situation where there was no other effective solution, it could only directly lock the realm gate to prevent more such situations from happening. It was only when they descended to the immortal realm and took back the merit that did not originally belong to them, and eliminated most of the source of the chaos, that the heavenly Tao then resumed its normal operation. Presumably, after it struck Divine Imperial Sect and the others, the nomological powers of this small world would completely return to normal. At the thought of this, the more they wanted to see what happened to those people from Divine Imperial Sect. Unfortunately, in the end, they still could not go watch this show, because Fatty was about to ascend. Almost at the same time that the nomological powers recovered, Fatty's spirit chi began to increase explosively. The tribulation clouds in the sky began to gather again. This time it was an ordinary lightning tribulation for ascension. Lone Moon glanced at the strength of the lightning tribulation, not the least bit worried about Fatty. This bit of lightning tribulation was probably not as bad as when he fed Fatty moves. Let's return to the immortal realm first. He instructed Fatty, then pulled Shining and Chef through the realm gate, back to the immortal realm. There was no problem with Fatty going through the tribulation. The key was that he was afraid that the people above would tamper with it. He remembered that in Yutsong's East Sui, more than half of the immortals used that cheating method to ascend. Although Yutsong was already dead, there was no guarantee that other people would not tamper with Fatty. That was why they had to return as soon as possible, find out where Fatty was ascending, and guard it in advance. But when the few of them reached the immortal realm, they realized that they had been overthinking. Almost the moment they crossed the realm gate, they heard the familiar sound of thunder. The sky of the immortal realm was dark, and the entire East Sui was covered in tribulation clouds, almost covering every immortal city. The rumbling sound of thunder came down one after another. Even the three people who just came to the immortal realm were almost dragged into it. The corner of Loman's mouth twitched. The heavenly Tao was having fun striking the immortal realm, and now it was casually striking the immortal realm. It seemed like it had no intention of letting these people who cheated to ascend go. Lomun sighed. He did not care about the heavenly Tao's large-scale execution site, and pinched his fingers to calculate the location of Fatty's ascension, then brought Shining and Chef in that direction. Indeed, on a flat ground they sensed Fatty's aura. Immortal chi surged all around, already beginning to condense into the shape of an immortal ascension stage. They did not have to wait for long before they saw a beam of light shoot up into the sky. Chapter 497. That's right. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something and asked, where did Fatty get all that merit from? Yutsong and the others probably used that merit to deceive the heavenly Tao. And he actually has it in his body in every lifetime. How much merit did he have to be able to withstand the consumption of so many lifetimes? The master and disciple both stiffened for a moment, then squeezed out an innocent smile. I don't know, don't mind such details, Father Nyo. Do you want to eat a fruit? Master is right, Father Nyo. Do you want to eat a pastry? Lone Moon's expression darkened, and he looked at the two suspiciously. Are the two of you hiding something from me? No. *2*, they said it in unison, resolute and resolute. Ha ha ha. There definitely was. He was just about to lose his temper when the realm gate opened and Fatty's figure slowly rose from below. His immortal bones were already formed. The original spirit chi in his body began to transform into immortal chi. Perhaps because immortal chi was more concentrated than spirit chi. With this transformation, even Fatty's figure began to change. The most obvious change was that the circles of fat on his body disappeared. Fatty, who originally weighed more than 150 kilograms, became thinner at a speed visible to the naked eye. So he really was not growing fat, but spirit chi. Lone Moon sighed and walked forward directly. The welcoming light around him also began to disappear, revealing a figure that had shrunk by half, and a simple but extraordinarily familiar face. Lone Moon's feet stopped. His eyes widened abruptly, staring at that face that was so familiar that it made his teeth itch. Instantly, he felt a mouthful of blood rush up his throat. He almost could not help but throw the fan in his hand. Fiend God! Holy shit! When he turned back, he realized that the master and disciple were already long gone. Damn it, he was going to kill those two little bastards. Fatty, on the other hand, was stunned. Once he saw the person in front of him, he immediately ran toward Lone Moon happily. Master, I successfully flew. Get lost. From now on, you're expelled from the sect. No, Master. Father Neo had been very irritable recently. He even felt like beating someone up, especially a certain two wastrels. It was obvious that the two of them had long guessed that Fatty was the reincarnation of the demon god. But they didn't tell him until they ascended. This was too much. Father Neo, don't worry about such details, okay? Shening chewed on her fruit and comforted him. Yes, Father Neo. I only guessed it when I was at the bottom of the lotus pond. I Ching also persuaded. Besides, a fatty is a fatty, and a demon god is a demon god. They are two completely different people now. Master is right. Let bygones be bygones. Besides, Fatty doesn't remember. Lone Moon scanned the master and disciple coldly before replying. Scram. Don't think I'll give you another cent for your food expenses. No wonder his physique was so special. No wonder his bones were so rich in merit in every life. He was the god of creation, and he had protected the plane for so long. It would be strange if his merit wasn't deep. Moreover, he was originally the god who controlled the heavenly Tao, so it was not strange that the heavenly Tao would open back doors for him everywhere. Although he understood the logic, he was still unhappy, okay? Even though he was no longer the god of creation, even though he understood that Fatty was just Fatty, when he thought about how the person he had worked so hard to teach all these years was actually the god fiend who had cheated him countless times in the past, he had the urge to shove Fatty back into the lower realm. Who cares who? I don't want to care anymore. Master. Fatty, who had no idea what was going on, looked confused. Why did Master suddenly look so scary when he looked at him? Although Lone Moon's attitude towards him in the past was not very good, it was not this serious. In fact, if Fatty made any big movements, he would receive a 360-degree death stare from Master. Could it be that the situation of his immortal ascension was wrong? Or did he miss something? Fatty's heart was bitter. He hugged his fat self, heart aching for him. He could only shrink in a corner of the immortal boat and tremble, afraid that Lone Moon would kick him off the boat. Perhaps because the pressure was too great, and in addition to the fact that he was hiding in a corner, there was nothing else to do other than cultivate. Fatty shrunk back and returned to his original size, and he seemed to be a few kilograms heavier than before. Shening. I Ching. Even though he was not broad-minded, he was still fat. He was indeed a ball. Perhaps it was because his current image was too different from that treacherous god-fiend of the past. Lone Moon's anger finally subsided a little. His expression also softened a little. At least he did not want to throw Fatty off the boat every now and then. Seeing this, Fatty suddenly understood something. So the reason why Master was angry was because he had lost so much weight. Was that why Master felt sorry for him? At that moment, Fatty's heart was filled with gratitude. He silently decided in his heart that he was determined to maintain his figure from now on. He no longer looked at Lone Moon with fear in his eyes. No matter how cold and cruel Fatty stared at him, Fatty looked back at him passionately. His eyes sparkled. Lone Moon could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Goosebumps rose all over his body. Could Fatty's brain have gone haywire after being beaten up by him? Humph. The god fiend was indeed a pervert. Fatty ascended to the East Sui country. As they were not in a rush, the few of them took the immortal boat back to the invincible immortal palace in the 9 heavens. Although they had stayed in the lower realm for many years, due to the time difference, they had only left for less than 2 days. After arriving in the upper realm, they were delayed for quite a long time. Lone Moon originally wanted to hand Fatty over to Yu Hong. After asking, he found out that Yu Hong had gone to another continent to do business. Even Siyu was not around. They had no choice but to return to the back of the palace to rest. Once they entered, they found a pile of all kinds of small animals in front of them. They were stacked on top of each other, filling up the entire courtyard. They could not even see the door. From time to time, they could hear a few pitiful cries. What is this? Lone Moon's expression darkened. Who put all these animals here? Wait, why were these animals faintly emitting blue god power? These are divine beasts. Exalted goddess, you're back. Little Black jumped out of nowhere. Perhaps because he had married Yu Hong, he had the confidence of one of their own. He did not even tremble when he saw Shining. He glanced at the animals in the house. As if he had guessed what they were thinking, he explained. Oh, these were sent by a person called Hong Meng. He said they are for you, exalted goddess. Hong Meng? Lone Moon paused. Only then did he remember about the other plane. Their plane was opened by Shining. So Hong Meng would indeed send some things over from time to time. But there was no need for him to send so many at once, right? It was enough to last them for a few years. Ever since you left, he would come here every morning to look for you, exalted goddess. Little Black continued. And the more he sent, the more he sent. That's why they piled up like this. Chapter 498. Lone Moon glanced at the master and disciple duo, who were trying their best to stuff a mountain of small animals into their own storage bags, with a look of pleasant surprise on their faces. They were even pulling Fatty along to help. He turned and asked Little Black, did he leave any message? Hong Meng came so frequently. There must be something important. Little Black thought about it, then nodded. I think he said that he would wait for exalted goddess in some outer realm. Outer realm? Lone Moon was stunned. Could it be the divine realm? Shining left an entrance to the plane door there. It seemed like Hong Meng really had something important to do. He frowned and asked Little Black to bring Fatty down to find a place to stay. He went forward to help Shining, and the others put away the ingredients in front of them. He explained the situation, and then opened the passage to the divine realm. Hong Meng was indeed in the divine realm. He was sitting anxiously on the grass beside the plane tree. He seemed to have waited for a long time. The grass around him was almost flattened by him. Lord, you're finally back. Seeing them appear, Hong Meng's face lit up. He immediately got up and walked over. Hey, Meng Meng? Shining waved. Hong Meng. Lone Moon. I Ching. Can you have a name that you can remember? Exalted goddess, my name is Hong Meng. Hong Meng frowned as he answered. Oh. Shining nodded. I've received your little animals, Meng Meng. They all look good. Thank you, Meng Meng. All right, as long as you're happy. Hong Meng, do you have something important to tell me this time? Lone Moon stepped forward and went back to the topic at hand. Yes, something important. Hong Meng shook off the thoughts of Meng Meng and then cupped his fists towards them seriously. I'm here this time because something happened in our plane. I have no choice but to ask for your help, Lord, and your 2 assistants. What happened to your plane again? Didn't it just reopen and start to breed living creatures? There can't be invaders, right? His expression changed. That's not it. Hong Meng shook his head. Our plane has just been reborn. We didn't attract any invaders. Others wouldn't like it either. What's going on? Hong Meng's expression changed. He looked at them awkwardly, then said with some guilt. It's like this. Ever since we planted the plane origin, the living beings that originally belonged to our plane have indeed returned to the plane through the origin. But there's a small problem? What small problem? Lone Moon frowned. The creatures in the origin have been lost in the turbidity for a long time, so they will more or less be infected with some ruthless energy. In order to guide the creatures, a new order must be created. However, ancient gods of creation like us cannot directly interfere with the matters of the plane. Thus, the other 12 decided to enter the cycle of reincarnation and reincarnate as ordinary creatures to guide everyone. And then there was a small problem. Hong Ming looked anxious again. After they reincarnated, they lost their memories. Although I'm guiding them in the dark, I'm not strong enough, and I can't take care of everything. Plus, I can't interfere directly, so the new order has never been established. He looked up at the 3 expectantly. The planes of the few lords have stabilized now. So may I be so bold to ask the 3 of you to follow me there, and help me one more time? You mean, you want us to help you rebuild the heavenly Tao? Yes, yes, yes. Hong Ming nodded vigorously. Not going. Lone Moon rejected instantly. Hong Ming was stunned. His expression fell. That's your own plane's matter. Solve it yourselves. Did he really think they were doing charity? But go, Father Niu. Shening suddenly spoke. Shening. Lone Moon glared at her. The last time he helped, you went straight into hibernation. Who knew what would happen this time? It's all right. Shening took a bite of her fruit and tilted her head. Also, we've already kept the little animals. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Then go back. The master and disciple hurriedly pressed down on their storage bags and took a step back together. Shening. These 2 bastards. Were they trying to anger him to death? Just as he was about to fly into a rage, Chef's voice sounded in his ear. Father Niu, do you remember what Senior Xinjing said when Master took over this plane? Lone Moon glared at him and replied casually. What has that got to do with this? Didn't Xinjing strongly oppose her taking over? She even said that if she really wanted the plane, she might as well split it herself. He stopped halfway and widened his eyes. Holy shit. Are you serious? I Ching nodded seriously. That plane wasn't formed naturally. It was split by Master, which means that Master is actually the manager there. Although we're not the plane's assistants, if something happens there, it would affect Master too. Damn it. Shening was such a hands-off boss. Wasn't it enough to dump one plane? Was she going to dump another one? Lone Moon took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart, which meant that they had to care about this. Father Niu, why don't you eat a fruit to calm down? Shening hurriedly handed a fruit over. Lone Moon glared at her. Don't give me a green one if you can. Do you think I'm fatty? Air. Shening could only shrink back. All right. Lone Moon then turned to look at Hong Meng. We'll help you one more time. Hong Meng's face was wild with joy. Although he didn't know why he suddenly changed his mind, he still cupped his fists and bowed solemnly. Thank you, sirs. He hurriedly turned and opened the plane gate, as if afraid that they would change their minds. Chef. Shening suddenly turned and said, Call Fatty over too. Yes, Master. Wait. Lone Moon faltered. Why do you call Fatty? Yet I Ching's figure flashed. In the next moment, he had already pulled the confused Fatty back. He has experience. Shening replied. Lone Moon still didn't agree. He did have experience in the past, but now he's already no longer a god fiend. Before he finished speaking, Shening suddenly raised her hand and pointed at Fatty's head. The thick immortal chi on Fatty's body suddenly disappeared. Instead, it faintly revealed an even more shocking aura, just like Hong Meng beside him. Shening regained Fatty's ability as a creation god. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. All right, as long as you guys are happy. Only Fatty, who didn't know what was going on, looked confused. He looked around and then at the few of them. Where was this? What just happened? Let's go. Go. To where? Who can explain this to me? The 3 people in front had already turned and walked through the glowing white door. Fatty looked around and had no choice but to follow them in. The white light flashed in front of them, and the world in front of them changed. Before the few of them could see clearly, they heard a rumbling sound beside their ears. Something was smashing straight towards them. Chapter 499. The array formation around them was instantly activated. and a layer of transparent defensive array directly enveloped them inside. Only then did they see clearly that it was a fireball that had just fallen. There was a commotion in front of them. There were several groups of figures fighting in the air, spells and divine artifacts flying everywhere. The ground was scorched, and from time to time, there would be lightning or various spells falling. That was how the fireball fell. Everyone. What's going on? Hong Meng's face paled. He almost forgot that he had set up the exit here. He hurriedly said with some embarrassment and panic, "I'm sorry, sir. I opened the exit in the wrong direction. Please come this way." With that said, he immediately turned and opened up a spatial tunnel. The few of them looked at him suspiciously, then turned and walked in, leaving this battlefield. The scenery in front of them changed again, and in the next instant, they were already in a place surrounded by purple mist. A tall palace stood in front of them, and there were 3 golden words written on top, Purple Night Palace. The few of them followed in, and sat down in the main hall. Lone Moon then said, "Tell me, what's the situation here? Why can't the order of the heavenly Tao be established?" Hong Meng's body trembled. After a while, he gritted his teeth and finally explained the situation of this plane in detail. In short, this plane was just a coffee table, and on it were all cups and cutlery originally. With Shen Ying's help, the plane had already been re-established. Furthermore, they were the gods of creation from the previous generation, so they had experience in rebuilding order. Actually, as long as they did not deliberately interfere, when the original purple source was completely integrated into this plane, living beings would naturally be born. It would even be like the other plane, extending more and more small worlds. But this process was very long. It could take hundreds of millions or even tens of billions of years. Hong Meng and the others waited patiently at first, but looking at the empty plane, they inevitably felt a little lonely. When people were lonely, it was easy to get into trouble. So they started to make trouble. In the beginning, he was only trying to reverse nurture the thin and weak original purple chi, hoping that it would grow faster. Of course, they did not do anything too overboard. After all, it was the foundation of the existence of living beings in this plane. And their method was effective. Slowly, new living beings were born in the plane. First, there were divine races like dragons and phoenixes, but because the original purple source was not strong enough. That was why these creatures only had physical forms, but no spiritual awareness. For example, last time he sent over a chicken that could lay spirit stones. Oh no, it was a phoenix. That was how it came about. Later, as the origin violet chi became more and more solid, some intelligent creatures began to appear. Many races appeared, and most importantly, the human race began to appear. However, because the soul in the source was summoned from the primal chaos, it was able to absorb the soul. More or less, there would be some residual chaos chi. This chaos chi would need to be reincarnated in the original source purple chi for many years before it would slowly disappear. However, due to loneliness, these creatures appeared in the world ahead of time. Due to the influence of primal chaos chi, they were somewhat violent in nature and possessed divine power. One race was stronger than the other. As a result, the naturally weak human race was pushed to the edge of survival, and there were a few times when they were almost completely exterminated. Of course, every plane had different races, so it didn't matter if there was one more or one less. But humans were different. Perhaps because this plane was split by Shening, the pattern here was more or less similar to I Ching's plane. The human race was weak, but they had strong reproductive abilities. What's more, the lifespan of mortals was less than 100 years. Wave after wave, they could soon bring all the original creatures back to this plane. In addition, the original source purple chi was equivalent to the river of forgetfulness. The more souls flowed in it, the stronger it became. While the other races were strong, they could live for thousands or tens of thousands of years. What's more, they could only give birth to 1 or 2 offspring every few thousand years. Some could only give birth to 1 or 2 children in their lifetime. In comparison, the living creatures could not circulate at all. Instead, it would increase the burden on the original source purple chi. This was also why, although the human race was weak, they were often favored by the heavenly Tao. Reproduction was the foundation of all living creatures. It was a pity that the main force, the human race, could not continue to survive under the threat of the other races. Hong Meng and the others then realized the seriousness of the problem. They hurriedly separated the human race from the other races. But the heavenly Tao was still not completely established. Without the human race, the other races were still in chaos. Looking at the mess of the plane, they were a little afraid. They did not dare to interfere casually. They were afraid that if they were not careful, it would be like the original source purple chi. They would almost cause the extinction of the human race. But there was still no hope of a new order being established. As long as the heavenly Tao was not established, the plane would be faced with countless dangers. So they thought of a way. They directly entered the reincarnation cycle and became a part of the heavenly Tao. Then, they would use their reincarnated bodies to lead the races to dispel the turbid air and establish a new order. So they only left Hong Meng alone. They chose the 12 strongest races and entered the reincarnation cycle one after another. But while the ideal was rich, the reality was harsh. The 12 people who entered the reincarnation cycle were no longer the 12 ancient gods of the past. Having lost their memories, they forgot their mission. And because they were born with strong spirits, they quickly became the strongest in the race. Then they started fighting amongst themselves. No matter how Hong Meng explicitly hinted or reminded them in a roundabout way of their previous mission, none of the 12 paid attention to him. They completely threw themselves into the new life. They directly led their race and provoked a full-scale war between the various races of the plane. This war was obviously going to reach the side of the human race again. In addition, more and more living beings returned to the original source purple chi from the chaos. The souls piled up in the original source became more and more abundant. But there was no place for them to be born here. This was no longer a matter of strengthening the original source purple chi. It was a matter of the original source purple chi exploding. Hong Meng really had no choice but to run to Shining to ask for help. Are you all retarded? Lone Moon glared at him. Even back then, Shining only dared to ask Chef to rewind. Where did they get the confidence to think that after reincarnation, they would still be the same people as before? This is the small problem you were talking about. No wonder they came to the battlefield the moment they came. The entire plane was probably almost destroyed, right? Wait, he suddenly thought of something. Those little animals that you bribed Shining with. Don't tell me you picked them up in the war? Hong Meng stiffened. His face paled. He looked at him weakly. How can that be, Assistant Lone Moon? Ha 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 ha. It was obviously the case. For all #hashtag forget it. He sighed. Since you already found out that the 12 people did not go according to plan, and even aggravated the seriousness of the matter, why didn't you just make a move? Even if you can't make them come back, it would be good for them to be reincarnated as humans. He was an ancient god. This was something he could do. It would not cause the situation to worsen. Chapter 500. Hong Meng's smile stiffened. He shifted uneasily on the chair. Actually, I tried, but he didn't continue speaking. His whole body shrunk, and his face was so ashamed that his head almost dropped to the ground. Lo Moon paused. Something connected in his mind. You didn't get beaten up by them, did you? He lowered his head even more. Holy shit. You really lost. What happened to being an ancient god? Even Fatty's face has been thrown away by you guys, okay? My lord. Hong Meng's face was completely red, and his eyes darted around, as if he wanted to find a hole to hide in. When they entered reincarnation, in order to suppress those races more conveniently, they reincarnated with their cultivation. So, Lo Moon stood up abruptly. Those 12 people are still at the ancient god level? Yes. Hehe, goodbye. Lo Moon turned to leave. No. Hong Meng hugged his leg and turned to look at Shining. My lord promised to help me. Why are you hugging my leg when you're begging her? Lo Moon tried to pull his leg away. She promised. Go find her and ask her to help you find those 12 people. You caused this yourselves. I'm not going to care. 12. A certain someone who was chewing on a fruit paused. It sounded troublesome. He stood up immediately and said seriously, Father Neo is right. We can't do anything about this. Chef, go home and cook. Yes, master, no problem, master. Hong Meng. What happened to help? This is not just because of the lack of order. It's because of the birth of spiritual awareness. Fatty suddenly spoke. Hong Meng paused and turned to look. What do you mean? Aren't they the first living beings born in this world? Fatty explained matter-of-factly. Let's not talk about the influence of the turbid chi. Whether it's demon beasts or humans, if there's no guidance, they won't naturally know what order is, right? Causing chaos and getting rid of dissidents is just their survival instinct. Fatty continued. Because no one tells them what's right and wrong. Even if the heavenly Tao were to punish them, they wouldn't know where they were wrong. Therefore, what they lacked was not order, but people who could teach them what order was. Hong Meng was stunned. That was indeed the case. The reason why the 12 ancient gods reincarnated back then was to guide the various races to cultivate normally and in the chaos. It was just that they had gone astray as well. But I'm afraid that if I continue to interfere, he was really afraid that the more he helped, the more it would become messy. It was already a mess. Aren't you just trying to establish order? Fatty wasn't as worried as him. The situation can't get any worse. Why don't we just tell them what they should do? Huh. Hong Meng was still a little confused. What did that mean? Fatty means. Lone Moon sighed and said, you should open a school first. What do you mean by call? Perhaps it was because Hong Meng was crying out too miserably. And this plane was indeed related to Shining. Lone Moon did not manage to leave. He had agreed to help him rebuild the heavenly Tao. Fatty was right. The reason why it was a mess down there was not only because these races were affected by the remnant chi of chaos, and were indeed cruel by nature. More importantly, there was no one who could suppress them and teach them how to be human. No, teach them how to be gods. That's right, those races that were fighting fiercely were all divine races. Originally, Hong Meng and the others had this opportunity, because no matter how strong the divine races were, in the eyes of the dozen or so ancient gods, they were just a piece of cake. But Hong Meng was scared out of his wits by the fact that the human race was almost wiped out. He was too afraid that this plane that they had so painstakingly found would be destroyed by them, before it could even grow up. What's more, this world had not formed the heavenly Tao yet, so they could not predict the future. That was why they came up with the reincarnation plan to reduce the impact. In the end, the matter was not resolved, and they even lost their own people. They really did not interfere when they should, and blindly interfered when they shouldn't. The best way now was to build a platform for them to coexist peacefully, and teach them how to love each other, to build a harmonious and stable big plane. Therefore, on the third day of their arrival, the Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace branch was officially established. This time, they changed the rules for the selection of principals. Whoever won would be the principal. Shening lost unsurprisingly, and Chef, because he was holding a spatula, could only use a rock. Lone Moon could not help but use a cloth out of reflex, so the position of the principal naturally fell on Lone Moon's head. As for Hong Meng and Fatty, one had a criminal record, and the other's looks really affected the school's image, so they were directly disqualified from playing rock, paper, scissors. To show his seriousness, Lone Moon personally changed the signboard of the Purple Knight Palace to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace branch, and also watched as Hong Meng changed the square in front of the hall into a huge square that could accommodate tens of thousands of people. He originally wanted to put some chairs, but thinking of the divine race's thick skin and flesh, forget it, he let them stand. The school's transformation was complete. Next was the problem of recruiting students. Will they come? Hong Meng asked worriedly. Nonsense. Of course not. Huh. Hong Meng paused. Then all this we did, isn't it? For nothing. You didn't even put up a single advertisement. Who would know that you opened a school? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at him. Don't just grow old, don't grow a brain. Once we put up an advertisement, people will naturally come. What was an advertisement? Did it mean to advertise widely? Then how should we put up an advertisement? A fight is the best advertisement. What? Lone Moon ignored him and asked, "Tell me, what are the names of those 12 traitorous grandsons? Call them over. Let Chef beat them up. Beat them up. Then they will naturally not dare to do anything rash. Then teach them. Teach them until they learn well." He spoke seriously. This was not the time when he opened a sect. There was no competition. There was no need to consider reputation and such. "Didn't you say that they are the leaders of the 12 races? If they stay here, the others will naturally come." Hong Meng thought about it. It seemed right. "Then how do we call them over? Just directly issue a battle notice. Didn't most leaders care about their reputation?" With that said, he raised his hand and produced a piece of paper, channeled his god power, and directly wrote, his words sharp, full of provocation, as mean could be, the kind that anyone who saw it would have a stomach full of anger. Then he made 11 copies of it, stuffed it to Hong Meng, and let him distribute it. Chapter 501. Hong Meng sneaked a glance, and immediately closed it again. Luckily it wasn't for him. He would be furious after reading it. Then, he conjured a seal and cast a spell. More than 10 battle invitations turned into flashes of light and flew out. The battle was set for the next day. As divine beings, he was not afraid that they could not make it. Even if the 12 of them joined forces, he did not think that Chef would lose based on his abilities. It was not that he was bragging, but he could crush them all. Even if there was an accident, there was still Shining. So Lone Moon was not worried at all. Then on the second day, no one came. Lone Moon looked at the empty square, not knowing how to react. Could it be that they were too far and could not make it? No matter, he could wait another day. On the third day, they still did not come. Could it be that the divine beings here did not have the basic ability to cut through the void? On the fourth day, they still did not come. Could it be that the battle invitations were delayed, and something went wrong with Hong Meng's spell? On the 10th day, they still did not come. Could it be that they were scared out of their wits by his battle invitations? On the 15th day they still did not come. Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng, Fatty. The square, which could accommodate 10,000 people, was completely empty. A faint cold wind blew past, sending chills down one's spine. Holy shit, they actually dared to stand me up. Lone Moon's expression darkened, and he pulled out his sword. Hong Meng, tell me where they are. He was going to destroy them. Father Niu, Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit at the side, suddenly spoke. What? Those people are the first batch of indigenous people of this plane, right? So what? Can't I beat them up? No, this world has not even established rules. There is nothing. That includes words, right? Huh. You used the language of that plane to write the battle invitations. Can they understand it? Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng, Fatty. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 4 top experts were stabbed by a knife at the same time. A place called IQ suddenly ached. Although they did not want to admit it, at this moment, they were all idiots. 12 Divine Race Encampment. Half a month ago, something strange happened in the various god clans. A divine object fell from the sky and landed in front of the clan leader. The divine item was squarish and crimson, with a faint golden glow on its body. It was as if it had a mind of its own. Whenever other clansmen approached it, it would fly away and land in the hands of the clan leader. The chief observed it day and night for 10 days, and still did not know what it was. When he unintentionally opened it, he saw a long white scroll covered with tiny golden marks. Their appearances were extremely strange, and they would even float up from the god artifact one by one. They floated in the air, and radiated light for a long time without falling. They were like glowing insects, emitting radiance in the dark night. It won't disappear until it's closed. The various races were astonished. Indeed, things that fell from the sky were extraordinary. There must be other uses for such a divine object. Thus, after one side investigated, they discovered that all 12 Protoss had received the exact same item. As they didn't like each other, they had a small fight every 3 days, and a big fight every 5 days. The 12 god clans, who had a reason to fight, and who had no reason to create a reason to fight, felt that they had to fight for such a good thing. Thus, without any doubt, Without hesitation, the 12 god clans started fighting again. Chef, who finally reacted and was sent by Father Nyo to personally challenge them. Should he rush up and beat them up now? Or should he wait for them to finish fighting, then rush up and beat them up? Chef looked at the sky one last time, calculated the time for dinner, and decided not to wait. Thus, he directly went up and beat up the leaders of the 12 god clans one by one. He also took care of a few beasts that were not afraid of death, and rushed up to him on their own accord, bringing them back to roast. Then, he looked at the Protoss who were lying on the ground trembling in fear. He took out a stack of paper, one for each person, and forced them over. As he did so, he said with a serious expression, "Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch, understand? All the gods." Only when he finished handing out the thick stack of paper did he turn around and tie up the 12 leaders like he was wrapping dumplings. He said word by word, "The few of you must understand." With that said, he dragged a string of people and flew away. The originally noisy scene fell into a strange silence. After a long time, the Protoss finally dared to get up. They looked down at the things that were forced into their hands. Instantly, a voice rang in everyone's ears. It was obvious that someone had learned his lesson last time. Not only could this advertisement be seen, but it could also be transmitted. A low and deep voice shouted from inside. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is a multifaceted, modern, all-round civil and military school dedicated to training high-end talents of the Protoss and building a perfect new world. Our school now has 5 teachers. 4 of them graduated from the management college in another plane, and 1 of them studied in the same college. All of them have almost perfect teaching experience, as well as perfect personal skills and near-perfect teaching methods. That voice came one after another, with a motivational quality that could not be ignored. Everyone who heard it looked confused, but they could not help but feel an impulse for no reason, especially the last sentence. Do you want to become a stronger Protoss? Do you want to be the best among the Protoss? Do you want to be the strongest Protoss? Do you want to be as powerful as the person who beat up your clan leader? Come to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is your wisest choice. As long as you study here, you will become the strongest king. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and pick up the electricity beside you. Apui. Come directly to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Address: Purple Knight Palace, right above Purple Cloud Mountain. Limited places, first come, first served. The Protoss all looked at each other, the passionate advertising message reverberating in their ears. After a long while, someone finally whispered, Is this true? Isn't the one who lives in Purple Knight Palace the old man, who often comes to the battlefield to steal corpses, and was beaten up by the clan leader? But that person just now was really powerful. Since the clan leader is not here, should we go and take a look? Thus, Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch finally successfully recruited its first batch of students. Lone Moon asked Chef to force the sound leaflet, and the publicity was quite effective. After I Ching kidnapped the leaders of the 12 races, within a few days, a large group of Protoss arrived in front of the palace. From a rough look, there were tens of thousands of people. Perhaps it was because Chef happened to be on the battlefield when he beat them up. At that time, there were many people, and the effect of the advertisement was maximized. These people did not retreat at all, but directly turned around and came to Purple Knight Palace. Chapter 502. Although most of these students were not really here to learn, they just wanted to see the situation. Some even wanted to save the 12 people, of course. Most of them were here to watch the show. Lone Moon did not care so much. Since they were here, they could not leave. Lone Moon asked Hong Meng to expand the square by 10 times, and then directly set up layers of arrays outside, locking all the divine race people inside. To put it nicely, closed education. With students and a venue, the next step was to officially start teaching. Lone Moon then thought of a major problem. These people did not have any foundation. It was not that they did not have the foundation of cultivation, but they did not even have the basic foundation of words. And even because of the influence of the chaotic aura, there might even be problems with their understanding. Because of this, the few of them had to hold a board meeting. These divine race people obviously had to start from the most basic literacy. But the key was who would teach them? I feel that the teaching standards and methods of our previous world are still more advanced. Lone Moon glanced at Shining. Shining, I have learned for hundreds of years and have forgotten most of it. Why not you teach? Huh. Shining, who was suddenly called, was stunned. We are not learning the same system. Are you sure you want me to teach? Shit. He almost forgot that she was only a student on Earth. She even had to repeat a year in primary school. Then what should we do? Chef, you do it? I also do not remember much about enlightenment. Chef shook his head. Lone Moon could only look at Hong Meng. I remember even longer. He hurriedly shook his hand. On the other hand, Fatty raised his hand weakly. Master, what you want to teach? No. Fatty shook his head. I want to say, what do you think of Brother Rabbit? Lone Moon. I Ching. Shining. Lone Moon stood up and patted Fatty's shoulder. Fatty, it's been so long. You finally said something sensible. Was Master praising him or scolding him? Lone Moon did not delay, and directly returned to the other plane, entered the previous small world, and went to the southern land, and appeared in front of the blissfully eating carrots in the demon monarch palace. The rabbit's paws trembled, and it almost fell off the throne. Great immortal, why are you? Before it could finish speaking, Lone Moon pulled its ear over and said seriously, Rabbit, I'm giving you a chance to ascend to immortality. Oh no, I'm giving you a chance to become a god. Do you want it? Ah, dong. This time the rabbit really fell down. Was it hallucinating? Is identical to. It was stunned for a long time before it nodded stiffly. Yes, I do, but it was just a rabbit. Becoming an immortal was already an extravagant hope, let alone becoming a god. As long as you think about it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon did not waste any more time talking nonsense with it. He picked up the rabbit and left. The rabbit was dumbfounded. By the time it reacted, it had already been thrown in front of a large group of strange animals. There were so many of them that it couldn't even see the end of them, and every single one of them was emitting a divine aura that made it tremble with fear. Rabbit's legs turned to jelly. If not for Lone Moon holding on to it, it would have fallen to the ground. They were all gods. Had it arrived at the god realm? Rabbit wanted to faint for a moment. Obviously, Lone Moon did not give it the chance. He directly stuffed a book into its hands. Here, this is the teaching material. You just need to teach them how to read for a while. Huh. The rabbit had not recovered from its daze. Read. Divine race? Great immortal, no great god. I'm just a rabbit. Why? You can't read? I can read. This was not a question of whether it could read or not, right? Besides, why couldn't the divine race read? That's good. I'll leave it to you, Rabbit. Lone Moon patted its shoulder and directly grabbed it, and flew up to a high platform. He even set up several layers of arrays for it. The rabbit only felt that the divine aura that was suppressing it and suffocating it disappeared in an instant. When it regained its senses, Lone Moon was already gone. Only the rabbit was left standing high up on the platform. Below it was a black mass of divine race army that stretched as far as the eye could see. The rabbit's legs began to tremble again. Was this some ultimate test that Great Immortal had set for it? But since it was already here, it could only bite the bullet. With trembling hands, it flipped open the book. It was indeed a beginner's book. It was simple and easy to understand. It even had pictures. It wiped the cold sweat from its forehead and gritted its teeth. It turned around and sat on the praying mat on the platform. Almost instantly, an array was activated under its feet. A virtual image of it appeared in the sky. That image was very wide, almost covering the entire square. It appeared clearly in front of the students of the various races. The various races, who had never seen such high technology, were stunned. They quieted down immediately and looked up at the virtual image in the sky in shock. At the same time, The rabbit's voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. The rabbit flipped open the book in its hands. Instantly, the contents of the book appeared in the air, like a PowerPoint presentation. Cough. Now let's start the lesson. The rabbit officially began its beginner's teaching career. Hence, from then on, there would often be sounds of geese, 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 drifting through the purple night palace, grass on the plains, and so on. The rabbit was a little afraid at first. After all, it was a group of Protoss in front of it, and it was just an ordinary lop-eared rabbit that had taken the back door to reach the 12th rank. Under the suppression of their race, it was natural for them to be afraid. But after being afraid for so long, it got used to it. I0. Not only did he teach it, but he would also encourage everyone to chant along with it. In the beginning, the Protoss below also harbored a sense of curiosity and novelty, and earnestly learned from the rabbit for a few days. But after a period of time, he found that every day was boring learning how to read. Some of them even wanted to rush out of the array formation. They were used to being wild, and had never been restrained. In addition, they were born valiant, so their tempers were naturally not too good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be constantly fighting and causing chaos in the world. After failing to break out of the array formation, the divine race began to target the rabbit on the high platform. He wanted to grab it and use it as a hostage, but unfortunately, he was injured by the formation on it. Since Lone Moon could bring the rabbit here without worry, he naturally had already thought of a way to deal with it. Looking at the square that was starting to be in a mess after a few days, Lone Moon directly released the head of the cult, Chef. There was only one effective way to deal with this group of troublesome students, and that was to just beat them up. Hence, after beating everyone up again, the entire teaching square was restored to order. Chef also carried his sword and patrolled the square from time to time every day. If he found someone disobedient, he would stab them with his sword. Anyway, the divine race had thick skin and flesh. Even if Chef attacked and got injured, he would recover in a few years. Chapter 503. In the beginning, Chef prevented them from betraying their master and hurting Rabbit. Then, he prevented them from escaping. Then he prevented them from fighting among themselves. In the end, he only had to prevent them from sleeping. Rabbit's teaching also achieved some initial results. Whether it was Rabbit or the divine beings below, they actually did not need to sleep. In other words, there was no need for breaks between classes. They could continue teaching day and night. As a chatterbox, Rabbit had an extraordinary obsession with teaching. If they did not understand it once, he would say it twice. If they did not understand it twice, he would say it 10 times until they understood. Especially after discovering that they could not hurt him at all, he completely let go. He used his full level of verbal cannon. At most, he would chew on a carrot halfway to adjust his words. In fact, when he encountered a disobedient student, he would even stop and patiently guide them to give him some advice. "Sai, why do you have to do this? You know that you can't break this array, and will even suffer a backlash. Why would he do such a foolish thing that would only bring him more benefits than benefits? Can't we be a little more peaceful? I'm here to teach you how to read. As long as you know and learn, you will learn in a few years. As the saying goes, one can only become a demon after suffering the hardest. Blah 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 blah. Hey, Supreme Divinity, what are you doing? How can you bite the divine friend beside you? As the saying goes, one must abstain from eating before one can cultivate. They are at least classmates who listen to classes together. How can you eat them? No matter how big the grudge is, with such feelings, it is time to let it go. You have to know. Blah blah blah. Oh, and that student who is scratching his feet. Please put them down. Can't you see that the students beside you have all fainted? We are all gods. We are fated to be gathered here. We should understand and respect each other. Can't you continue to scratch after school? And blah blah blah. If Rabbit's teaching skills were at level 1, then his ability to talk nonsense was at level 10. He would definitely read until you started to doubt human beings. No, the kind that doubted divine beings. At first, the divine beings did not know how to respond. They could only grit their teeth and listen to him, until they felt that the whole world was filled with his persuasion. What was worse was that in order to help them learn how to read as soon as possible, the array that Lomun set up on the platform was directly connected to their divine senses. In other words, no matter what he said, the words would appear in the minds of the people listening below like subtitles. Therefore, as long as she opened her mouth, the golden words would drill straight into the minds of the gods, the kind that could not be blocked. No one could withstand such a barrage of attacks. So in the end, whenever it opened its mouth and said, that, all the gods burst into tears. We were wrong. I won't do it again. Master, I beg you. Can we go to class normally? You're worth teaching. The rabbit nodded satisfactorily and nibbled on a carrot while it was at it. The completely unemployed teaching director I Ching. It was better for him to return to the rear hall and help his master cook. Lomun also expressed his approval of the quality of Rabbit's teaching. Even his attitude towards Fatty was much better. He also began to consider the idea of letting the rabbit take on a few more classes after the literacy class ended. Of course, as a reward for an outstanding employee, he waved his hand and approved Rabbit's request to open up a plot of land at the back of the mountain to plant some radishes. Hong Meng. The floor seemed to be his. Rabbit taught for a whole 3 years. As it did not stop day and night, it taught like a cramming duck. It finally allowed these tens of thousands of illiterate people to lay a good foundation of words. Especially in the later stages, when Rabbit often wanted to reason, causing them to be highly nervous. Almost all of them could repeat fluently after Rabbit said it once, or else Rabbit would say it 100 times. Lomun also felt that it was time to start teaching other classes, so he decided to take a break and rest for a day. It would be his turn to teach starting tomorrow. Almost at the same time that Rabbit walked down the stage, all the gods heaved a sigh of relief. Their backs that had been straight for several years were instantly lowered. Some could not bear the sudden relief and fainted directly. Too scary. Even scarier than the one with the sword. So the so-called rabbit race was actually such a scary race? All the gods trembled in fear. Rabbit, who had finally finished class, was already happily pulling his good friend Fatty to plant radishes. After all, he had eaten them for 3 years and had finished all the stock. Lomun was supposed to start teaching the next day, but he realized that those gods who had fainted had not regained consciousness, so he had to delay it for another day. On the 3rd day, he started the 2nd class. This time, he was the one teaching personally. The first class was about transformation. That's right, although all the gods here were born with the art of transformation, but they could only change their original form, become bigger, smaller, and different colors. For example, in the field now, everyone had compressed their bodies to become several times smaller, otherwise they would not be able to sit down at all. But none of them could transform. The so-called transformation was to transform into human form, not a simple illusion or something like a temporary image, but the entire body and meridians had to change. The reason why they had to transform into human form was because the human form was the best form for cultivation, commonly known as the Tao body. Transforming into the Tao body was the first step to entering the Tao. Lomun was much more straightforward than Rabbit. He directly cast a spell and transmitted the transformation method into the consciousness of all the gods. He only left a sentence: "Follow this method and cultivate by yourselves. I will come and check in 5 days." All the gods were quite happy at first. They did not expect that this new master was much more straightforward than Master Rabbit. Finally, they did not have to endure the pain of a long continuous sentence drilling into their consciousness. All the gods felt that they had seen the light of hope, until they fell back to hell 5 days later. They never thought that Lomun's check was a one-by-one check. If the transformation did not pass, they had to start all over again until they learned it. Not only that, his requirements for transformation were also extremely strict. It was not as simple as transforming into 4 limbs and hiding one's original form. Too tall, too thin, too fat, too ugly, too short, too. Even too little hair was not allowed. Even if the transformation clothes were ugly, it was not allowed to pass. All the gods, They kept feeling that this master was even more sick than the previous one. What should they do? Please wait online, it's quite urgent. The kind that could kill. It was not that no one resisted, but because they really could not beat him. Forced to transform hundreds of times every day. Of course there were many gods who were so irritable that they wanted to fight. But before they could get within 3 feet of him, they were beaten down. He indeed did not know how to nag like Master Rabbit, but he knew how to use poison. You transformed into such an ugly form, and you still have the nerve to show it to me. Do you want me to help you reforge? Reforge? Is your original form a pig? Are you so fat that you want to change races? Do you need me to send you into reincarnation to satisfy you? Reforge. This face of yours was transformed by that green bird just now, right? You are a mongoose. Why are you trying to claim kinship with others? Reforge. And the two of you, why do you look so alike? Why do you look like a married couple in front of me? I am not even single. What right do you have to pretend to be a married couple in front of me? Reforge. Chapter 504. Towards the end, Lone Moon said coldly, "If you can't even transform properly, you can only be little animals to be eaten." Lone Moon did not know if it was because he had a problem with their low efficiency of transformation, or because he was tired of beating them up so badly. At first, the races didn't know what he meant. Until the next day, he asked Chef to move the kitchen to the empty space in front of the hall. In front of the races, he took out the corpses of his kind. He began to boil water, pluck feathers, cut, fry. At a table not far away sat a figure dressed in red, holding chopsticks and knocking on the bowl, asking from time to time, "Chef, are you done? I'm so hungry." Sigh. Why did he move the kitchen? It was already a minute late. "Yes, master, I'll be done soon, master." I Ching responded, stirring the food even faster. All the races shuddered, only feeling a chill straight into their hearts. What Exalted Master said, little animals to be eaten, would really be eaten. So scary. Mama, I want to go home. No, Exalted Master. I want to listen to the lesson. Suddenly, all the divine races began to miss the previous Exalted Master Rabbit. Being nagged was better than being eaten. What was even scarier was that they actually felt a little fragrant. Under the pressure of being eaten at any moment, all the races began a new wave of learning with all their might. Their level of effort was even more than when Rabbit was in class. Even during the 3 times Lone Moon went to eat during the break between classes, they did not forget to make use of the time to practice. Only when Rabbit occasionally strolled over, all of them gave him a nostalgic look. Rabbit was dumbfounded. Maybe this was a group of good students who remembered old times. As the saying goes, there is only motivation when there is pressure. In less than 2 years, all the divine races learned how to transform. The originally messy square instantly changed into a group of handsome men and beautiful women, looking like stars. It could be said to have set the high standards of the divine race's attractiveness. From this moment on, Lone Moon officially taught them the orthodox cultivation method. Actually, the divine race's physique was already very strong. Naturally, there was no room for improvement. The only difference was how to use their own abilities more rationally and flexibly, and these were mostly based on their own understanding. What Lone Moon mainly taught was still the way to cultivate God power. Since these gods were the first batch of living beings in the world, the primal chaos energy in their bodies had to be purged. By practicing breathing and purifying their divine power, they could achieve the effect of purging the primal chaos energy from their bodies. The reason why they were so irritable and bloodthirsty was because of the chaotic energy in their bodies. These were emotions that were almost never seen in the divine race of the other plane. To the Shun clan, who could already transform into their Taoist bodies, this was not difficult at all. After Lone Moon taught them once, and told them the things to take note of, they could already understand. Furthermore, the chaotic aura in his body was indeed decreasing. However, this was a very long process that required a lot of patience and willpower. Of course, he didn't know if the other races had the patience and perseverance for his team of teachers, but it was definitely possible for them to calm down. Compared to the previous two classes, which were filled with people reading aloud or wailing, the entire teaching square was as quiet as a chicken. Lone Moon had nothing to do, so he released his divine perception and carefully scanned the tens of thousands of students present. He realized that there were differences between the Protoss. Apart from the previous 12, who were forced to learn and were often beaten up the most badly, the rest of the divine race were not top-notch. The cultivation levels of the other divine races were actually not the highest. Just like the dragon race, the golden dragon was the highest, the black dragon was the lowest, and all the water race had the opportunity to cultivate to become a dragon. And the phoenix race's 9-feathered phoenix was the strongest. Among them, the 9-feathered fire phoenix was the strongest. Although the other 1-feathered ones were also phoenixes, they were obviously not on the same level. It was the same for these divine races. However, the difference this time was only in terms of brute force. There was actually no technical content. So even if they attacked together, they would be easily beaten down by Chef. The only ones who knew a little about cultivation were the 12 reincarnated ones. Although they lost their memories, they retained their cultivation because they were reincarnated. So they instinctively knew some moves that others did not know. This was also the reason why they could join forces to defeat Hong Meng. So compared to directly teaching them how to cultivate and improve their martial skills, it was better to teach them how to understand the heavenly Tao. Actually, be it the so-called heavenly Tao or nomological laws, they were all the lowest standards to maintain the operation of the entire world, the endless cycle. This was like the lowest bottom line of this plane. Within this bottom line, all living beings were protected, living and multiplying, the cycle of reincarnation. There were 3,000 great Taos for you to choose, but you could not touch this bottom line. For example, like the invaders, or like divine imperial sects cheating to ascend, these were all not allowed. The former would cause the plane to be unstable. The latter disrupted reincarnation. The reason why the heavenly Tao locked that small world was actually not just because this method of ascension was evil and dishonorable, and even more not because Fatty was once a fiend god, but because they disrupted the order of reincarnation, so that souls could be directly reincarnated without going through the underworld. And it was definitely not only Fatty who was doing this. The pills that Hao Ran Court refined that contained the soul guiding powder was the best proof. They even distributed these pills to the various sections. This way, even if they were already dead, they could use the same method to reincarnate into the same small world, and then just walk the path of cultivation again. They must have their own internal ranking to decide who could enjoy Fatty's flesh and blood first. This way, they seriously violated the heavenly Tao's bottom line, so the heavenly Tao directly sealed the realm gate. Don't you want to ascend? Then none of you can think of ascending. Anyway, those who had not reincarnated in the underworld were consuming their own souls. Even if they did not discover the abnormality of this small world, after a long time, the heavenly Tao would naturally be able to make this group of people who violated the bottom line disappear forever. Thinking of this, Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He knew what he had to teach these divine beings who were born at the top of the food chain. Of course, he could not directly tell them what was going on with the heavenly Tao. He recalled the previous plane, all the concepts about the heavenly Tao rules, and recalled some of the Taoist information that he found at Xunying's place. After organizing his words, he officially began his lecture. He talked about the heavenly Tao, the Tao of all beings, human Tao, and even the Tao of self one by one. Then he found a few Taoist classics such as Tao Te Ching, Peace Sutra, De Daoluan, and so on to support the stage. He first read them, but worried that they would not understand, he carefully explained them in the vernacular. Chapter 505. Although Lone Moon was already trying his best to teach, logic was logic. Actually, it still depended on the divine race's own understanding, but he did not expect that after he explained it once, there would actually be people who understood it and directly went into meditation on the square. And there were 4 or 5 divine races. The god power around them instantly became many times denser, Their bodies began to appear with a soft blue light, and faintly with some heavenly power, causing the divine race beside them to jump in fright. A sense of fear extended from the bottom of their hearts, but different from the fear when they were beaten up before. There was a sense of awe. Lone Moon asked the divine race beside him to be quiet, not to disturb others in meditation, before continuing to preach. With this, more and more people went into meditation. They were divine races in the first place. Naturally, their qualifications were not bad. Especially after Rabbit's force-feeding teaching a few years ago, it became even easier to understand. Previously, it was only because of the influence of the remnant chaos chi. After learning to transform and regulate their breathing, this influence naturally became smaller and smaller. Looking at the square, the God power became more and more abundant, even faintly showing signs of materializing. These few days, there were even several rounds of spirit rain. Even the radishes that Rabbit planted in the back mountain matured in 4 hours. Rabbit's hands were sore from all that, not to mention the other crazy growing divine Ganoderma and immortal herbs. I Ching really could not watch it anymore. He could only go down the mountain to set up an array, to guide the excess God power out, into the ground, or into forming immortal meridians, or into the world. He casually asked the former master of Purple Night Palace, Hong Meng, for help. But he did not move, instead looking up at the sky in a daze, his eyes wide and face full of shock, pointing shakily at the sky, revealing an expression that was uncertain whether to be surprised or happy. Lord, heavenly Tao, it's starting to form. This was too fast. The flow of time here was different, and in order to stabilize the plane, Hong Meng and the others purposely accelerated the time in this side of the world. Actually, ever since Lord helped to split open the plane, it had already been millions of years. But even so, after so many years of hard work, there was no way for the heavenly Tao to be born. How long had it been? But the heavenly Tao was already showing signs of being born. I Ching looked up, sensing carefully only to discover that there was indeed a trace of nomological power in this world. His eyes darkened. He turned to look at the high platform, who was still focused on preaching, and instantly understood something. He looked at the person sprawled on the chair beside him, nibbling on a fruit. Master, could Father Neo be? Xinying's hands paused. She tilted her head and said, Yes, I'm a good leader. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. Raising his head once more to look at a certain person on the elevated platform, Zhang Xian sighed. What else could he do? Who asked him to be my teacher? I can only continue to spoil him. Yes, it was definitely not because Master was lazy. Lone Moon's lecture lasted for more than 10 years. In the beginning, he still seriously explained the textbook in detail, and occasionally interacted with the students. Seeing that more and more people were meditating, he felt a little happy. But no matter how exciting the content was, it would get annoying after 4 or 5 times. Therefore, later on, he simply changed the array formation on the high platform and stuck a few recording talismans on it. The content was the same anyway, but the amazing thing was that this kind of skimpy teaching method was really useful. More and more people were meditating, so Lone Moon continued to play the video with a peace of mind. And because they continued to absorb the God power around them as they listened to the lecture, the influence of the chaos chi in their bodies became less and less. They had long lost the fierce look on their faces when they first came here. They looked much more peaceful, and more like the real divine race. He glanced at the square. Everyone was sitting neatly. Even if they were watching the video, they were watching it seriously. There were still some people who were not meditating. Perhaps their comprehension skills were really not good enough. He thought for a moment, then opened the array formation that imprisoned them. The chaos chi in their bodies had already disappeared. Their minds were clear, and their consciousness was no longer affected. Naturally, they would understand the benefits of this cultivation. Although their comprehension skills were not good, it was also a good choice to go out and develop more fellow disciples. So it was time to let them out. At first, no one dared to move. They thought it was another term assignment to loosen the reins only to grasp better. But some of the bolder ones walked out, and after realizing that everything was fine, They left one after another. The number of people meditating in the square decreased by more than half. The remaining people were only those who had not woken up from their meditation. The duration of meditation depended on each person's understanding. It could be as short as a few hours, or as long as a few hundred, or even 1,000 years without waking up. The remaining people included the 12 reincarnated ancient gods. Among them, some were still meditating, and some were awake but unwilling to leave. Perhaps they understood something from listening to the lecture. That was why they did not want to leave. Lone Moon did not bother too much. The most worrying thing was still the human race below. This was the first problem that needed to be solved in this plane. The matters of the divine race were basically on the right track. There was no need to worry too much. It was time to go to the human race to take a look. He directly brought the cheat master and disciple away, leaving the other three behind. Now he was relieved. Although there were many divine race people in this square, Hong Meng and Fatty were both ancient gods. Even if something happened, they could at least escape. As for Rabbit, there was even less to worry about. Those divine race people now trembled when they saw it, afraid that it would speak. The psychological trauma was even more terrifying. Following the direction that Hong Meng pointed, they came to the human territory that was isolated. Only when they arrived did they realize that it was indeed far away from the battlefield of the gods. There was even a large sea area in between. The entire continent was sealed off by Hong Meng using a special sorcery, just like how God Fiend specially drew out the outer realm. The entire continent was surrounded by a huge barrier that blocked all the overly powerful living beings outside, including the divine race. Lone Moon directly released his divine perception to scan the area. He found that the situation was better than he imagined. Perhaps because Hong Meng isolated the continent in time, the number of human race people was not small. It was not smaller than the total population of the small worlds in their plane. He originally thought that he would see a primitive society. Unexpectedly, it was no different from the small worlds from before. There was even a national language and so on. Apart from the smaller scale, it was no different from the other plane. Let's go down and take a look. He pointed to the nearest forest outside the town and directly flew down. The few of them were just about to leave the forest when suddenly 4 or 5 people jumped out, looking at the 3 of them with a guarded expression. Who are you? Each of them was holding a knife, axe, or other metal weapon in their hands. They all aimed at the 3 of them. Lone Moon. Were they being robbed? Chapter 506. Seeing that they didn't respond, the leader, a tall and strong man, waved the knife in his hand and shouted, "Where did you come from? Do you have a travel permit?" Travel permit? Lone Moon was stunned. So it wasn't a robbery. He quickly put on a professional smile. Big brother, Who's your big brother? The man interrupted him directly, his eyes even more guarded. Cut the crap. Hurry up and take the travel permit, otherwise don't blame us for being rude. Lone Moon was speechless. This was the first time in his life that he encountered a failure in a negotiation. He was just thinking about what the travel permit looked like, and whether he should directly make one for the other party to see. Hurry up. Another younger man at the side also urged, and even glanced at Shening, who was closest to him. Travel permit? No. Shening tilted her head, but handed over a fruit. Do you want the fruit? Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Shening, don't make trouble. Who would want your fruit? And the one in your hand, isn't it the one that wasn't ripe last time? The one that you wanted to give to him but didn't? Can't you show some sincerity when you treat people to food? He was about to explain. The man opposite glanced at the fruit, turned to the others and said, "This person is fine." With that said, he took the fruit and even pulled Shening to his side, and then continued to take out his weapon, pointing it at him and Chef. Lone Moon. I Ching. How could this be freaking possible? Where's yours? The man continued to look at the 2 fiercely, grabbed the weapon in his hand and shouted, "Those without a travel permit are transformed from those man-eating monsters. Catch them." As soon as he finished speaking, the others all took up their weapons, ready to stab. Wait. Lone Moon thought of something in a flash. The corner of his mouth twitched, and then took out a bag of pastries and handed it over. Chef also reacted and took out half a pork knuckle. Those people took it suspiciously, picked it up and tasted it, then put away their weapons. If you have a travel permit, you should have said so earlier. It wouldn't be good if there was a misunderstanding. The leading man looked at the two with some dissatisfaction, as if blaming them for being too slow. He thought for a while and added, "But your travel permits are quite delicious. How do you make them?" Lone Moon. I Ching. Are you sure you're checking for directions and not robbing? Alas, the town hasn't been peaceful recently. That's why the checks on the people who come and go are stricter. The man sighed and continued, "You're not from here, right? Please don't be offended. We're doing this for the sake of the town's safety." Lone Moon regained his composure and immediately stepped forward. He resumed his businesslike smile and asked, "You're flattering me. This is how it should be. We can understand. May I ask, Big Brother, what has happened in this town? It's all because of those monsters." The man sighed and said, "Recently, more than a dozen people have gone missing in the town, so we are strictly checking the road passes." "All right, don't stay here any longer. Hurry up and enter the city. It'll be easier to bump into them when it gets dark." After saying that, he waved his hand to urge them. Lone Moon did not continue asking. He pulled Shin Ing and Chef towards the direction of the town. He vaguely guessed that the monster they were talking about should be something like a demon or a spirit beast, and one that could transform, but he did not know why its food was a road pass. When they reached the town, he looked up. There was indeed some demonic chi left in the town, but the demon might have already left. He turned to a peddler who wrote selling road passes and asked. Only then did he know that demons' food was humans, so they usually did not bring other food with them. And most demons retained their bestial nature. They were selfish and protective of their food. They would not share their food with others, so they used this method to distinguish between real and fake. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched when he heard this method. This method could at most identify some little demons who did not understand the world. If they really wanted to harm people, it would be strange if they could. But thinking about it carefully, there were no cultivators in this plane. It was already not easy for them to think of this method. Could he say that it was fortunate that there was a chef in their team? Otherwise, they would probably be thought of as accomplices of the monsters. The three of them walked around the town for a day. They basically knew the situation on the side of the human race. When Hongmeng isolated the human race, they only cared about the chaos of the divine race. They forgot that there were also demon beasts, demons, beasts, and so on in this world. So the human race was still quite dangerous. Their biggest advantage was the advantage of numbers. When they met the alien races, they basically had no power to resist. Just like the demon that had already eaten more than 10 people in this town. They might not be able to defeat it if they really faced it. The final solution was to move away from here. Therefore, the best way to solve this problem was to teach the human race how to cultivate, so that they could have the ability to protect themselves when facing demons and ghosts. In other words, their school had to continue. They might even have to open a second branch. "Father Neo, are we going to advertise again?" I Ching asked subconsciously. "Of course we have to advertise. Wait, why did you pull out your sword?" Seeing that Chef had summoned his sword out of habit, Lone Moon hurriedly pressed it down. "Not advertising?" I Ching tilted his head. "Tell me, who are we going to fight this time? I'll be in charge of fighting." "You'll be in charge of advertising. Who said we're going to fight?" "No, I'm not talking about advertising. I don't mean fighting." What was he so excited about? I Ching was stunned. Didn't the divine race beat them up last time? Wasn't advertising a verb? Fighting is only suitable for the divine race. Lone Moon glared at him. How can civilized people like us draw our swords so easily? Not even a kitchen knife. Then what should we do? Same rules. Let's build a sect first. Human cultivators should be much easier to teach than the divine race. After all, people who lived under the shadow of demons and ghosts all year round should be easier to deceive. No recruit. All right. I Ching nodded. After thinking for a while, he took out a map and said, "This is the map of the human race that I asked Hongmeng for before we left. If you want to build a sect, you can choose a location based on this map. Lo Moon took a look. Indeed, it was the whole picture of this isolated continent. It was surrounded by the sea, and was independent of the entire plain. He did not choose within the continent. Instead, he chose an immortal mountain near the coast. Seeing that he had chosen, I Ching continued. When I came out, I caught a newborn immortal meridian at the foot of the mountain. If we build a sect here, we can plant the immortal meridian here. Yes, this place is isolated all year round. Compared to other places, the spirit chi is indeed too thin. Not to mention the divine race's territory that was full of god power. Not bad. It's hard for you to think of collecting an immortal meridian. Wait. Chapter 507. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and scanned Chef from head to toe. Why do I feel like you're acting weird recently? It's one thing that you're not following Shining around and causing trouble, but you're even helping her? He was too obedient. Tell me, what did the two of you do? I Ching stiffened for a moment, still maintaining his poker face. His eyes turned toward Shining, and then he shook his head hard. No, we didn't do anything shameful. Are you wrong? You've already said it out loud. Don't turn your face away if you dare. With that said, he reached out and said, take out the storage bag. I Ching hesitated for a moment, but finally handed it over. He opened it to take a look. Apart from a pile of ingredients and cooking utensils, there was only a pitiful sword stuffed in the corner. It was so clean that there wasn't even a spirit stone. Lo Moon was still worried. He turned and reached out to Shining. And yours? I don't need to go through security check, do I? Shining grabbed her bag tightly. You have to go through security check. Alright, you have to return it to me. She quickly took out a few fruits and held them in her hands before handing them over. Lone Moon opened it to take a look, and his mouth twitched. He had thought it was just an ordinary storage bag, but when he opened it, there was a huge storage space inside, almost as big as a small mystic realm. Not only that, there was really a place inside that could be planted, and a forest of spirit fruit trees. No wonder Shining didn't go to pick the fruits, even though she didn't stop eating. So it was planted here. Needless to say, this small mystic realm, that looked like a storage bag, was definitely secretly given to her by Chef to cultivate. Not to mention the mountains of snacks and pastries. Was she going through winter? How much food did she stock up? More importantly, some of them even he had never seen before. This little bastard who ate all the food alone. She actually had the cheek to snatch food from him. That was too much. I'm not confiscating half. He waved his hand and took away half of the food inside, along with the ripe fruits on the tree. That's it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon stuffed the half-empty bag back and turned to walk across the street. Motherf asterisk her. Master, don't be anxious. Seeing that he had walked far away, I Ching silently took out a storage bag that looked exactly the same as the one he had just seen, and sent a voice transmission. Your bag is here. The one that Father Nyo searched just now was just a spare. Good chef. Shining immediately took it. And thank goodness there was a bigger one. Master. I Ching looked at Lone Moon, who had already walked far away, and said hesitantly, Father Nyo, did you see something? We still have to continue. That gave him a fright. Shining looked up at him and patted his shoulder. Up until now, everything is fine. But if in the future? Don't worry, he is Father Nyo. What should I do now that I'm even more worried? He would definitely flip out. He definitely would. What are you two waiting for? Lone Moon turned back and called out to the two of them. We'll stay here tonight. I've already booked a room. Hurry over. Yes, Father Nyo. No problem, Father Nyo. He decided that he had to stock up more food for his master now. Who knows, he might really run out of food in the future. The night was dark like water, and the full moon hung high in the sky. Perhaps because there was a monster outside the town causing trouble. The town was already silent at night. Under the moonlight, wisps of demonic chi began to appear in the forest outside the town. Lone Moon pulled I Ching and Shining out of the town, searching for the wisp of demonic chi that he felt during the day, and headed straight for the forest. Immortal cultivators had not started appearing in this plain yet, So the best way to spread the word was to subdue this demon and let the people in the town know what a cultivator was. He had already noticed during the day that the one causing trouble in this town was only a small demon. Its demonic chi was very weak, and it was hiding in this forest. Lone Moon originally thought that it would take them a while to find it. Unexpectedly, less than 2 minutes after the three of them entered the forest, a figure came out of the forest and fell in front of them. When it fell, it hit a rock and even moved to the side before letting out a cry of pain. Aya, Lone Moon. Shining. I Ching. Perhaps seeing that the three of them were indifferent and had no intention of going forward to help it up, the fallen figure did not get up, and then let out an even louder cry. Ayaya. Aya, hey, it hurts. The three of them still did not move. Finally, the other could not take it anymore and turned to look at them. With some surprise and a little anger, it reminded them, "Aren't you going to help me up?" The three of them exchanged a look and then replied in unison, "No." This was different from what they had thought. "What exactly do you want?" Lone Moon glanced at it. Did it think they were blind? Not to mention this pretentious performance, this was obviously a demon, right? Even if it did not know how to transform, it should at least cover that huge squirrel tail behind it. That was an insult to their intelligence, okay? The squirrel demon was stunned for a moment, completely unaware that it had been exposed. Seeing that they had no intention of helping it, it could only get up by itself. It patted the dust off its clothes and picked up the bamboo basket on the ground. As if afraid of exposing its identity, it even pulled the hat on its head and wrapped itself in a loose outer robe, except for its tail. Cough. "Thank you, kind people." It coughed and continued to speak with a childish and flustered voice. "Since you helped me up, and I happened to pick some rare good mushrooms, why not? We didn't help you up." Before it could finish, Lone Moon interrupted it directly. The squirrel demon, whose rhythm was interrupted, was stunned, and a trace of panic flashed across its face. It was stunned for a moment, ignoring his exposing, and continued to act. "No, you just helped me. I will sell you the mushrooms. Look, I just picked them." With that said, it held the basket in its hands and extended it towards them. They saw that in its basket, there was really a basket of mushrooms, one red and one white. The red one was still faintly suffused with a trace of demonic aura, and the other was a spirit plant with spirit chi. Lone Moon glanced at the squirrel demon. "What kind of mushrooms do you want to sell?" The squirrel demon was delighted, and the words "scheme has succeeded" were clearly written on its face. It quickly took out the red one and said, This one." After thinking about it, it was a little worried, so it picked up another white one and added, "You have to buy this one too, but you have to eat the red one first. After eating it, you can eat the white one when you wake up in the morning. You can't only buy one kind." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. "You mean if I eat this red one, I will only wake up after a night of coma?" "Yes, but you still have to eat the white one, otherwise it will be very uncomfortable." The squirrel demon nodded honestly. "I see." Lone Moon nodded. "Is this your first time coming out to cheat people?" Chapter 508. How did you know? The squirrel demon answered subconsciously, then reacted and looked at him with wide eyes, panicking. You. It stuttered for a long time but did not get an answer. Tears gathered in its eyes, and it looked like it was about to cry. After a while, it asked carefully with a sobbing voice, "Do you want to buy mushrooms?" The three of them. Such bad acting skills. Which school did he graduate from? It did not give up and handed 2 mushrooms, one red and one white, to Lone Moon. "Just buy a pair, okay? Or I can give it to you." Seeing that they did not take it, it panicked and immediately took the whole basket. "I'll give you all the white ones. I took a long time to pick them. Just buy one red one, okay?" "No." He directly revealed his identity. "You're a demon, right?" How did you know?" The squirrel stiffened. A trace of panic flashed in its eyes, but it still held the basket stubbornly. "Then do you want to buy mushrooms?" "No." Was this a retard? It did not forget to sell mushrooms at this time. The squirrel became even more anxious, and turned to hand the basket to Shining. Do you want to buy one? Shining looked down. I don't want vegetables. It could only raise it to chef. I don't make vegetables. The squirrel's face turned pale, as if the sky had fallen. The blue chest in its hand loosened, and immediately the mushrooms fell to the ground. The whole demon did not feel good. It sat directly on the ground and broke down crying. Wah! There's no time. Why doesn't anyone buy my mushrooms? Little Flower will be eaten. It's all my fault I can't save her. Wah! It howled in grief, and tears streamed down its face like beans. Its originally short body shrunk into a ball, and its large tail slapped the ground again and again. It did not even care about hiding its identity now. It let its hat fall, revealing 2 drooping triangular ears. Shining, I Ching, Lone Moon. The demons of this plane were like this? Why did they have a sense of guilt like bullying a child? Don't cry. Lone Moon had a headache and couldn't help but say, I want to cry. It howled even louder. Little Flower is going to be eaten. It's all my fault. I hurt her. Wow. What Little Flower? Hey, if you cry again I'll take care of you. Is this a child? Accept me. Anyway, Little Flower is gone. And I don't want to live anymore. Wow. Holy shit. Is this little demon addicted to crying? Just as he was about to conjure a hand seal, Shining stepped forward and stuffed the fruit into his mouth. As soon as the crying stopped, the world fell silent. Mushroom, who wants to eat your Little Flower? Shining squatted down and asked. The squirrel demon was stunned and looked at her with teary eyes. Holding the fruit in his mouth with both hands, he replied pitifully, I'm a squirrel, not a mushroom. After saying that, he did not forget to hold the fruit in his hands and bite into it while sniffing and answering, It's the Tiger King. He caught Little Flower. There were other demons here. Who is Little Flower? Shining continued to ask. Little Flower is my best friend. The squirrel nodded as if emphasizing. She's like you, she will give me delicious food. When I was still a little squirrel, I lived on the tree next to her house. She would give me a big pine nut every day. He's so good looking. Look, I look just like him now. Lone Moon was stunned. He took a look at its incomplete form. That Little Flower was a human. But later, she was caught by the Tiger King. It looked sad again. The Tiger King said that if I could bring other people back to him, he would return Little Flower to me. I waited here every day, but those people were afraid of me and refused to go back with me. So, I wanted to use mushrooms. Yesterday, the Tiger King said that if I didn't bring people back, he would eat Little Flower. The more it spoke, the softer its voice became, and its head drooped lower and lower. Finally, it looked at them, unwilling to give up. You really don't intend to buy a mushroom? You've already said your purpose. Who would buy it? All right, bring us to that tiger demon. Lone Moon said directly. We'll help you save Little Flower. If he guessed correctly, that tiger demon was the one that had been causing trouble in the town recently. And this squirrel didn't have any bloody resentment on it. It seemed that it had never harmed anyone. The Little Flower he was talking about should also be a human. Really, its eyes lit up and then darkened again. But the Tiger King is very powerful. Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to explain to it. He directly picked it up with one hand and flew up on his sword. Where? The squirrel was startled and quickly hugged its tail, then weakly pointed to the right. The few of them flew in the direction pointed by the squirrel. The tiger demon's lair wasn't far. They arrived in less than 2 minutes. Before they got close, they smelled a strong bloody smell from afar. It even overshadowed the demonic aura that wasn't very strong. Lone Moon looked at the cave entrance that emitted an unpleasant stench, frowned and walked in. The squirrel was already scared out of its wits. It slipped to the back, thought about it, and turned to hide behind Shining. Those who gave it fruits were all good people. Once they entered the cave, the bloody smell inside was even stronger, and even a little choking. There was a faint cracking sound under their feet. I Ching turned his hand and summoned a ball of fire. It instantly lit up the cave. The cave wasn't very big, and one could see everything at a glance. The tiger demon wasn't in the cave. The whole cave was filled with bones of all kinds of beasts, but more of humans. Some had become white bones, and some still had flesh and blood, emitting waves of stench. Great, the Tiger King isn't here. The squirrel looked happy. He rushed out in an instant and began to search in the cave. Little Flower, where's Little Flower? I'm here to save you, Little Flower. It shouted for a long time, but there was no response. It began to search in a panic, and even began to pick up the bones on the ground. Lone Moon frowned, grabbed the squirrel demon, and dragged it out. Let's go out first. No, I want to save Little Flower. The squirrel struggled, but was still dragged out. Let me go. There's no living person inside. Lone Moon glared at it inside. How long has your Little Flower been caught? The squirrel was stunned, and then counted with his fingers. 4, 5, 6. I don't know. But the Tiger King promised to let me exchange for her. She must. She's long dead. Looking at the situation in the cave, the tiger demon wouldn't leave anyone alive at all. It was just lying to this squirrel. Chapter 509. No, it can't be. The color drained from the squirrel's face, and the tears in his eyes began to gather again. The tiger demon clearly said that it can be changed back before the sun rises. Clearly. Wah. Ugh. Seeing that it was about to start howling again, Lone Moon was quick to react and stuffed a fruit into its mouth. Demons were good demons, but they were too noisy. I say, little mushroom, you. He was just about to say a few words when he suddenly felt a burst of demonic aura coming from the left side of the forest. It's in the direction of the town. I Ching reminded. Go back. Lone Moon picked up the squirrel demon, turned around and flew in that direction on his sword. Before he got close, he heard a loud bang, and there were faint cries of horror. Outside the town wall, a huge tiger suddenly appeared, and it looked like it was already at the 5th level. Its original body was about the same height as the city wall, and at this time, it was using its front claws to attack the thick city wall. For a moment, large pieces of bricks fell to the ground, and it looked like the city wall was about to collapse. Tiger! Tiger! Tiger King! The squirrel recognized it at one glance, and his body trembled. Lone Moon's eyes darkened, saving them the trouble of looking for it. Chef, it's time to advertise. I Ching nodded and was about to summon his sword. Forget it, I'll go. Lone Moon suddenly changed his mind, and casually threw the squirrel to him. If you go, you'll definitely be finished with one sword again. Advertisements and whatnot, of course the more gorgeous, high-end, and shocking the better. At this time, the tiger demon below had already collapsed the city wall, and the people in the town were fleeing in panic. The tiger demon roared, leaped up, and opened its bloody mouth. Just as it was about to bite towards the crowd, suddenly, a golden light flashed. A translucent barrier suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and the light of the array formation shone brightly. Countless golden array formations appeared in the sky, and in an instant, the entire town was reflected in a golden light. That barrier grew bigger and bigger, and directly enveloped the entire town inside. Tiger demon, don't you dare do evil. A deep male voice seemed to come from the sky and instantly spread to everyone's ears. Seeing that the tiger demon was unable to cross the barrier, no matter how hard it tried, the panicking crowd instantly quietened down. They all looked up into the sky in shock, only to see a man in fluttering white clothes standing in the air. His body was surrounded by white light, making it hard for people to see him clearly, but they could not help but feel a sense of unreachable distance. I Ching and Shunning quietly snuck into the crowd, watching Father Nyo's grand show-off. Lone Moon changed his hand and conjured another seal. Suddenly, another array appeared and fell directly on the tiger demon below. A huge pressure immediately pressed down on the demon below. The tiger demon could not stand steadily, and was about to be suppressed to the ground. Seeming to understand that it was no match for the tiger demon, it turned around and wanted to escape. However, the person in the sky raised his hand, and instantly, a row of swords fell from the sky, directly cutting off its escape route. One of the swords even pierced its front paw, causing the tiger demon to immediately let out a cry. But that ethereal voice sounded again. Tiger demon, your body is full of blood and resentment. You have violated the taboo of cannibalism and brought disaster to the people. Your sin is unforgivable. Today, I will help the people of this town and get rid of you, the scourge." With that said, he conjured a seal with one hand, and instantly, a huge sword appeared in the air, shining with golden light and blinding. The tiger demon wanted to escape in fear, but it was suppressed by the sword chi, and could not move. It could only watch as the huge sword fell directly, and the whole demon tiger instantly stopped breathing. The townspeople were all stunned. After a long while, they reacted with a face full of excitement. "That monster is dead. That monster is really dead. That's great. We don't have to escape anymore. He saved us and killed that monster. That person can actually fly, and can even kill such a huge monster. Yes, and those just now. What exactly is he? Could it be that he is? The crowd pondered for a long time, but did not come up with anything. Shening, who was watching from the side, added casually, "He's an immortal." The crowd was stunned, and suddenly came to a realization. They cheered even more excitedly. Yes, it's an immortal. It's definitely an immortal. An immortal has come to save us. Only immortals can use this kind of immortal spell. He is definitely an immortal. An immortal has descended to the world to help us subdue the monster. The crowd became more and more excited as they spoke, and some people were already bowing to Lone Moon. Only then did Shining continue to eat her fruit. Yes, the importance of a supporting role. Seeing that the effect of the advertisement was almost over, Lone Moon then removed the array around them, leaving only a few spells to illuminate and create the atmosphere. Only then did he continue to maintain his unfathomable business expression, turn back to look at the townspeople on the ground, and still use that ethereal voice to speak. "You don't have to bow to me. I just happened to pass by this place. Perhaps I have fate with this place, so let me give you one more piece of advice." He sighed and continued. "Now that demons are running amok in the human world, those who are fated can go to the Eastern Immortal Mountain to seek the path of immortals, learn the art of subduing demons, and solve this disaster." With that said, without another word, he turned and flew toward the east on his sword. In a short while, he disappeared without a trace. Even the dreamy light in the sky slowly dissipated, leaving only a huge tiger carcass at the city gate. Everyone looked at each other, and began to recall the words of the immortal before he left. To seek the path of immortals, to learn the art of subduing demons. Did the immortal mean that mortals could also learn immortal spells? Everyone's eyes lit up, their faces full of eagerness. 100 miles away. "Can we go home and cook?" Shining laid lazily on a rock at the side, not wanting to move anymore. "Of course not." Lone Moon refused. "Huh." Shining was stunned. "Didn't they finish the advertisement? How can we just advertise once? There's no Weibo here. The transmission of information is slow. We have to go to a few more places and let everyone know that we can cultivate." He turned to look at the two people who had only done the supporting role from the beginning to the end. "I'll go alone. You guys can't help anyway." With that said, he tore the person from the rock and threw her to Chef. "You guys go to the place you chose last time, plant the Immortal Meridian, and build the sect first." "Planting the Immortal Meridian is no problem." I Ching frowned and answered. "But the house? Who's going to build it?" Lone Moon was stunned. Only then did he think of this question. I Ching frowned and said casually, "We already had the places we used to live. The only invincible sect that was built by Rabbit. Now there's no rabbit here." With that said, 3 pairs of eyes immediately turned to look at a certain little squirrel selling mushrooms. The squirrel trembled and immediately shook his head like a drum. I only know how to plant mushrooms. What's the use of you?" This was the most useless little animal they had ever picked up. Chapter 510. Perhaps the disdain in their eyes was too obvious. The squirrel could only add weakly, "How about I build a nest for you?" He still knew how to build a nest. A very big one. The 3. "Who wants to live in your nest?" "Forget it." Lone Moon took out a white box and handed it to I Ching. "This is a cave abode that Fatty made when he was practicing last time. It's not big, just make do with it. He took out a summoning amulet and asked Fatty to come over as soon as possible. I'll meet up with you in a few days. Also, he pointed at the squirrel demon. Find a place to release this mushroom. He explained everything, focusing on Shining, before summoning his flying sword. Just as he was about to fly away, he gritted his teeth and turned back, taking out the snacks he collected from Shining last time, and stuffed them back. Stay here and eat your fruits, don't lose them again. Shen Ying's eyes lit up. Yes, Father Nyo, no problem, Father Nyo. Lone Moon then turned and flew away with the expression of a worried old father. He was tired to death for his troublesome children. For mortals who had not come into contact with the mortal cultivation, it was quite easy to deceive. No, it was quite easy to advertise. Lone Moon only set up a few small spells everywhere, and subdued a few troublesome demon beasts along the way. Slowly, the rumor that there was an immortal mountain in the east, and fated people could ascend it to seek immortality, spread throughout the entire human continent. And many people had already begun to set out to find the immortal mountain. Lone Moon also distributed a few maps at the right time, and spread rumors that the younger one was, the easier it was to cultivate and so on. There would definitely be a lot of people going there. The advertising here was very successful. But when he thought of those two troublesome prodigals, his heart was in a mess, and he felt that it would be abnormal if they did not cause some trouble. So when he finished his work and hurried back, he saw that spirit peak floating high in the air, surrounded by immortal chi, and especially that magnificent building on top of the spirit peak. He could not react for a moment. This was Chef and Shen Ying's doing? He subconsciously released his divine sense and scanned the place. He found that it was not transformed from an artifact. It was a real palace, and there was a large group of them. He could still vaguely sense the aura of the immortal meridian flowing on the ground, but the peak was filled with spiritual energy, and even the conversion of the spiritual energy had been completed. The family's prodigal son had suddenly become so obedient and capable. The old father was a little confused. He turned around and walked towards the back of the hall. Father Nyo, you're back. Shen Ying waved a hand in greeting, then quickly swept the food into her own bowl. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He sat down at the table and looked around. Chef, what's with these palaces? Who did you capture to build it? I didn't capture anyone. I Ching answered seriously. It was all built by Master Shen Ying. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes suspiciously. I'd believe you if you said she would demolish a house. Building a house, hee. Wait. He immediately stood up and carefully looked around. He was too shocked just now to notice. Why do I feel that the layout of this house is a little familiar? Why does it look a little like Hongming's? You guessed right. It's Purple Night Palace. I Ching answered seriously. You pulled Hongming over and made him build one just like that? That's not it. I Ching shook his head. Master said that building a house is too troublesome. Anyway, Hongming has ready-made houses. We can just move it over and use it. So, the corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. You moved the entire Purple Night Palace over? That's the fastest way. Can I ask, what's left over there? I Ching thought about it. There's still the square in front. After all, there were still many divine beings who had not woken up from their meditation. Lone Moon was silent for a while, then took a deep breath. Chef. He clenched his fists by his side and patted Lone Moon's shoulder. With a serious face, he raised his thumb. Good job. I Ching. Shen Ying. After teaching for so many years, these two finally had some of her old father's true teachings. She was a little gratified. On the other side of the sea, Purple Night Palace was left with a bare mountain top. Hong Bankrupt Meng stood on the empty square, feeling a sense of desolation in his heart. Brother Hong, do you want a carrot to calm you down? Rabbit could not bear to leave, so he handed a carrot over. Hong Meng, one may not be enough. It's all right, I'll give you a basket. With the housing problem solved, Lone Moon had a peaceful meal. He was just about to ask about the spirit chi here. After all, Purple Night Palace was originally Hongming's palace. This place should be filled with God power. Cultivators definitely could not withstand God power directly. Even immortal chi was not very suitable at the beginning of cultivation. Actually, spirit meridians were the best. But this plane had just been opened. Immortal meridians and God power were everywhere. Spirit meridians, which were relatively rare, were hard to find. He was still thinking about what kind of array to set up after planting the immortal meridians to convert the immortal chi into spirit chi. He did not expect Chef and the others to solve this problem in advance. Just as he was about to speak, Fatty walked in. Seeing him, he was instantly delighted. "Master, you're back." He walked over quickly. Behind him, a small figure carrying a basket followed. Lone Moon nodded. He glanced at the figure beside him and turned back to look at Chef. "Why is this mushroom still here? Didn't you release it?" The one beside Fatty was that squirrel demon. I'm very useful." Mushroom stepped forward and hurriedly said, "I know how to grow mushrooms." "Who wants your mushrooms?" Lone Moon frowned. "Master, the mushrooms it grows have the effect of converting immortal chi." Fatty hurriedly explained. "The spirit chi here is all converted by the mushrooms it grows. It can convert immortal chi." Lone Moon was shocked. He turned to look. There were indeed a few mushrooms growing in the courtyard. One look, and he knew that they were created by sorcery. They were emitting faint spirit chi. What's going on? How could demons have such an ability unless... It's not an ordinary demon, I Ching said in a low voice. Lone Moon scanned the squirrel demon from head to toe. He raised his hand and conjured a seal. The squirrel's body shook and instantly changed back to its original form. The basket in its hands fell with a thud. It happened to cover its body and its big tail. The squirrel began to struggle in a panic. Fatty hurriedly opened the basket and rescued it. It seemed to be scared out of its wits. It quickly climbed onto Fatty's shoulder and hid behind him. It stared at Lone Moon with a pair of big teary eyes. It was the size of a palm. It was indeed a squirrel. But why could it create a mushroom that could convert spirit chi? "Fatty, bring it over." He wasn't shinning. "Was it so scary?" "Don't be afraid." Fatty comforted the squirrel demon. He then carried the squirrel down from his shoulder and brought it over. Chapter 511. Lone Moon adjusted a bit of immortal chi and reached out to touch the squirrel's forehead. After checking its body, his eyes widened. Spirit chi. This squirrel demon's meridians were filled with spirit chi, and there was no demonic chi at all. He had thought that it was a little demon that had just gained sentience, which was why its demonic chi was so weak. It turned out that it did not have any at all, and the aura of the wood spirit chi was vaguely familiar, just like a carrot. "You're a vegetation spirit?" Lone Moon was shocked. Only vegetation spirits could communicate with all plants, so it was not strange that they could create mushrooms that could convert spirit chi. But he immediately denied it. "No, I'm really a squirrel." "Didn't it eat a big pine nut?" Shunning suddenly said. Lone Moon paused and then reacted. "You've eaten vegetation spirits before?" Vegetation spirits actually did not have a specific shape. After gaining sentience, they could change their shape according to their own will, like a carrot. It was only because Shunning kept calling it a carrot that it grew more and more like a carrot. The squirrel said that the big pine nut that little flower gave it to eat should be a vegetation spirit that had not yet gained sentience. That was why it became a demon and had wood spirit chi all over its body. Its level was still low now, so it could only plant all kinds of mushrooms. When its cultivation level increased, as long as it had seeds, it would probably be able to plant all kinds of immortal herbs. Who knew how many cultivators would fight over it? "Master." Fatty could not help but speak up. "It's a little demon with nowhere to go. If it goes out, it will probably become food for other demons. Let it stay here. I will take care of it." Lone Moon glanced at Fatty. Was he thinking about his own situation? So he sympathized with this squirrel? Suddenly, he wanted to ask, "Do you still remember the rabbit at Daming Lake? If you want to stay, then stay." This would save him the trouble of setting up a new array and converting spirit chi. Fatty was instantly delighted. Just as he was about to say something, Lone Moon changed the topic and added, "The fee for taking care of it will be deducted from your account book." Fatty tripped and almost fell. He felt that the burden debt on his shoulders had become even heavier. But Lone Moon sat back down. Don't think that just because you call me master, you don't have to pay your debt. He was not willing to take care of just anyone. Shening and I Ching, calmly munching on the food, the immediate family expressed that they had nothing to fear. A few months later, on the open space on the east side of the continent, a dense crowd had gathered. Most of them were children around the age of 10, but there were also youths in their 20s or 30s. Some wore gorgeous clothes, while others were in tatters. They seemed to be people from all walks of life, and they were all looking around excitedly. These were the first batch of people who had heard the news and gathered here to try their luck. Recently, a rumor began to spread in various countries in the human world. At noon today, a celestial mountain would appear and accept disciples. Those who were fated could enter the mountain to cultivate. They would have the opportunity to learn extraordinary skills, and might even ascend to become an immortal. Although this rumor came from a strange place, there were still many people who came from afar to witness this so-called celestial mountain. However, when they arrived, they didn't see a celestial mountain. They only saw a strange stone by the sea. On it were the words Celestial Ascension. The words glowed with a faint golden light. It didn't seem ordinary. What immortal mountain? It's just a piece of rock. Some of the people who had come from afar couldn't help but feel disappointed when they saw that. Yeah, where are the immortals? They made us come all the way here. Why don't we come out to take a look? It seems that all the things about cultivating to become an immortal are lies. Although there were many people here, most of them didn't really come to become immortals. Instead, they were here to watch the show. In the end, they didn't see the show and only saw a piece of rock. It was inevitable that they lost their patience and wanted to leave. However, there were still more people who stayed, including some who had actually seen the immortals. You can't say that. Didn't you say it was noon? It's not time yet. Yeah, I've seen the immortals with my own eyes. The celestial mountain must be here. That's right. Maybe it's because we are mortals and haven't seen it at all. Everyone thought about it and agreed. Since they were already here, they didn't mind waiting for a few more days. The sun rose higher and higher, and the surrounding temperature also became hotter. The crowd that had gathered decreased a little. Soon it was noon. Apart from that piece of rock, there was still no celestial mountain, let alone immortals. Everyone revealed a disappointed look. It's a lie indeed. Someone couldn't help but curse. I don't know who spread the rumor. I must find the culprit and beat him up. With that said, he lifted his leg and kicked the strange rock beside him. But there was a loud bang, and the rock instantly emitted a blinding light that shot into the sky. The person was so scared that he fell to the ground. The restless crowd suddenly quietened down. They widened their eyes and looked at the scene in front of them in shock. They saw the golden light on the rock suddenly spread to both sides. As if a layer of curtain had been lifted, the sky suddenly shook. The coastline, which was originally a straight line, suddenly changed. Suddenly mountains appeared, hidden in the clouds. And above the mountains, a huge floating peak hung high in the sky. The peak was surrounded by clouds and mist, and the ground was bathed in sunlight. One could faintly see a magnificent palace on the top of the mountain. Immortal! Immortal mountain! It's an immortal mountain! Someone exclaimed loudly. Everyone stared at the mountain floating in the sky. There was no longer any doubt in their hearts. So there really was an immortal mountain. At this time in the main hall, who placed the spirit testing stone under the mountain? Lone Moon turned and asked. The advertisement had almost gone to waste. It's me. Fatty raised his hand weakly. Why did you block the entrance with the spirit testing stone? He had no choice but to open the protective mountain array. Did he know how many spirit stones it would cost to open it? Master, didn't you say that we need to select disciples with spirit roots before we can go up the mountain? Without spirit roots, one could not cultivate. Fatty lowered his head weakly. In the past, all the immortal sects did this. Lone Moon stiffened. Forget it. Put down the immortal ascension ladder. He silently made another note on Fatty's debt. Yes, master. Fatty stood up and took out a stone Dharma artifact. He was just about to throw it out. Wait, Lone Moon added. Add another spirit selection array. That way people without spirit roots could not go up, and there would be no need for the spirit testing stone. Fatty nodded, and added an array on the Dharma artifact. He activated his spirit chi and threw it out. At the seaside below, a white path suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It meandered towards the mountain in front of them. It's the path to the immortal mountain, someone exclaimed. Only then did everyone seem to wake up from their stupor and scramble to run towards the road. But the moment they stepped on the path, some people ran further and further away, while some people whizzed back to where they started. No matter how hard they tried, they could not pass. Chapter 5:12. Everyone tried many times to no avail. Only then did they remember that the rumors said that only fated people could enter the immortal mountain. They had no choice but to retreat in disappointment. But there were very few people like that. Most of these people had spirit roots. The so-called immortal ascension ladder was actually used by the small world that Fatty was in to test and select new disciples. Different from the three azure realms, the sacred arrival world that Fatty was in had very few people without spirit roots. Immortal sects had a lot of resources and were naturally very strict about taking in disciples. Not only did they have to look at spirit roots, they also had to look at potential, enlightenment, and other aspects. On the immortal ascension ladder, there were many sorcery that could affect one's state of mind. The clearer one's mind and the more determined one was, the faster they could reach the top. Indeed, the people who had originally rushed up the immortal ascension ladder at the same time had already created quite a distance between them. The people who had originally been in front were all young and strong men. In less than 7 minutes, most of them had fallen behind. Moreover, most of them were panting and sweating profusely, but the women and children who had fallen behind had caught up. Especially the children who were under 10 years old. They did not look tired at all. Instead, they looked back curiously at the seemingly breathless adults. After a quarter of an hour, apart from the 5 or 6 adults who were in front, the rest were all children. How much longer do we need before we can come up? Lone Moon asked casually. Fatty glanced at him and said, We might need another hour. That wouldn't take too long. It should be over soon. Where are those 2 rascals? He turned around and realized that Chef and Shining were not in the main hall. Master, have you forgotten? Fatty reminded him. It's noon now. They went to have lunch. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Motherf asterisk cur, these 2 rascals. Father Nyo, it's time to eat. Just as he was thinking, Chef's voice sounded in his ear. Oh, there's no need for Fatty. I didn't cook for him. All right. Seeing that they still knew to call him, he would not deduct their food expenses this time. Fatty. Why did he send a voice transmission as well? He did not want to know. The distance between the people on the immortal ascension ladder increased. The people at the back looked more and more pathetic. Some of them could not even stand. Many people chose to give up and turn back. However, the moment they turned around, the immortal ascension ladder automatically teleported them back to the seaside. Hence, there were fewer and fewer people on the immortal ascension ladder. This was also Lone Moon's initial thought. The main purpose of the people he chose this time was not entirely to establish a sect, take in disciples, and teach them immortal cultivation. Instead, it was to pass down cultivation techniques to the human world. Therefore, not only did these people have to learn it, but they also had to pass it on to more people in the future. This allowed the human race to have the ability to protect themselves in the primordial world, where the heavenly Tao had yet to be completely established. In modern terms, it was to let some people get rich first, and then lead everyone to get rich together. Therefore, there was no need to recruit too many disciples, just a few would do. However, they were all going to become grandmasters in the future, so the selection process was naturally very strict. 15 minutes later, there were only a few figures left on the immortal ascension stairs. Most of the children were around 10 years old, and upon closer inspection, there were 20 to 30 of them. Next were young women, and there were only about 10 of them left. The ones with the least were the strong men, who had been the fastest at the start. What was amazing was that there were 2 older men among them. However, they were not at the bottom of the group. Instead, they were walking behind the 2 children. As for the 2 children, they were walking at the back of the group. They were also the most exhausted. They were a boy and a girl. Among all the children, only the little boy was panting and sweating profusely. It was not because of the array formation, but because he was carrying a little girl on his back. The 2 of them were about the same age. Naturally, it was difficult for him to carry her, but he still persisted. The only person left in the main hall, Fatty, looked at the 2 of them curiously. The little girl's face was pale and sickly. One look, and he could tell that there was something wrong with her body. From time to time, she would take out a small handkerchief to wipe the boy's sweat. The 2 of them seemed to be related by blood. They were probably siblings. Perhaps because the 2 of them were so special, Fatty could not help but look at them. They were still a distance away from the peak. The immortal ascension stairs would only be open for 2 hours. If they were lucky, they should be able to reach the top. At this moment, the person walking at the front was almost at the top. Fatty thought of the squirrel demon, who was still planting mushrooms at the entrance. With a turn of his body, he teleported to the entrance of the mountain. Indeed, a child who was not even 10 years old, with a pink face, had already appeared at the entrance of the mountain. The squirrel demon, who was diligently planting mushrooms at the side, jumped in fright. The spirit chi in his body surged out uncontrollably. With a few spluttering sounds, the ground around him was instantly filled with mushrooms. Monster! The child was shocked. Perhaps because he was too young, he did not know fear. Instead, he pointed at the squirrel demon and shouted. He even wanted to reach out to grab the squirrel demon's huge tail. Mushroom! Fatty called out and walked over. Great! Great immortal! The squirrel demon threw the mushroom that had fallen to the ground and hid behind Fatty. He looked at the child at the entrance of the mountain with an aggrieved expression. The child was stunned. Perhaps he recognized Fatty's identity. He immediately bowed respectfully. Chi-Su Nation's Lu Zheng greets immortal elder. His eyes were still looking curiously at the squirrel demon beside him. Fatty nodded and pointed to the empty space beside him. You are the first person to reach the top. Wait at the side first. When the people behind you come up, I will bring you to see Master. Yes, immortal elder. Lu Zheng obediently stood to the side. He was dressed well. His family must be wealthy. That was why he was so polite at such a young age. But he was still a child. He could not help but look around curiously. Fatty did not wait long at the mountain gate. The people behind him had already arrived. The first few were all children. When the 5th person arrived, a woman appeared. Then a young man and an elder came up. It was almost time. The stairway was starting to disappear from the bottom. Those who were still on it were immediately transported back. Just as the stairway was about to disappear completely, the boy carrying the little girl finally arrived. When he saw the mountain gate, his expression lit up. He seemed to use all his strength as he quickened his pace, wanting to climb the last few steps. Suddenly, a tall man rushed out from behind him. At this point, the stairway was about to disappear. He also quickened his pace. As if annoyed that the child was blocking his way, he pushed the person in front of him aside. Out of the way! Then at the last moment, he reached the top of the mountain. When he looked up, he saw Fatty surrounded by immortal chi. Before he had time to rejoice, his figure flashed, and he was transported back to the seaside. Chapter 513. Fatty furrowed his brows. He could have come up with the 2 kids, but he had taken the unnecessary step of pushing someone else. If mortals fell from here, they would be smashed to pieces. But the immortal ascension ladder could not harm anyone, or they would be teleported out. People with such evil intentions could not be accepted into the sect. He immediately cast a spell to summon the children who had fallen off the immortal staircase back to the immortal staircase. He retreated a certain distance and sent a sliver of immortal chi to the immortal ascension ladder, delaying the disappearance of the ladder. After all, it was pardonable. He would give them another chance, and see what choice they would make. Unexpectedly, the child only hesitated for a moment before continuing to walk towards the mountain gate. His eyes were resolute, and he did not let go of the little girl on his back. He really managed to reach the top of the ladder before it disappeared again. Fatty kept the immortal ascension ladder and closed the protective array outside. The people on the beach watched as the entire immortal mountain started to disappear. Fatty turned to look at the only 9 people who had climbed up. Since you can reach the immortal door, you are fated to be immortals. Follow me now. I will bring you to meet the immortal elders, who will be teaching you immortal arts in the future. Teaching us immortal arts? Then they will be our masters in the future? Someone said excitedly. Fatty paused and thought about the 3 people in the back hall. Lone Moon had not acknowledged him as his disciple all these years. I Ching had never accepted disciples, and Lady Shen. Forget it, he replied. You should call yourselves exalted masters. They will teach you cultivation, but they will not accept you as disciples. Everyone was a little disappointed, but they still followed him to the back hall, their eyes filled with anticipation. Considering the image of the sect, Fatty calculated the time, and even specially brought everyone around in a big circle before arriving at the rear hall. As expected, they had already finished eating. From afar, they could see 3 people sitting in the courtyard. There were 2 men and 1 woman. The man on the left was drinking tea, while the woman in the middle was leaning on a chair, chewing on a fruit. The other man was pouring tea for her. Apart from the woman in the middle, the other 2 were surrounded by immortal qi. Master, Fatty looked at Lone Moon and said, the selected disciples have arrived. There are 9 in total. 9? Lone Moon paused. What a coincidence. The first batch of Invincible Sect disciples also consisted of 9 people. He scanned the group. Apart from 3 adults, the rest were all little radishes. Greetings, immortal elder. The 3 adults cupped their fists and bowed. The other children followed suit and bowed as well. Yes. Lone Moon nodded. He put down the cup of tea in his hand and stood up. Since you have passed the test of the immortal ascension ladder, you have officially entered the immortal sect. Everyone's eyes lit up. They were even more excited than before. Nowadays, demons are running amok in the human world, and there are even more dangers in the outside world that you can't even imagine. I'm teaching you the art of cultivation because I want to wait until you've mastered it before you can establish your own sects and raise even more cultivators to resolve the dangers in the world. Lone Moon spoke his mind directly. That's why I hope that all of you will work hard in your cultivation in the future. Only then will you have the ability to teach others. Yes, immortal elder. They replied in unison. Yes. Lone Moon nodded and introduced himself. My Taoist name is Lone Moon. That's I Ching. The one beside him is not important. He would not remember them anyway. Shenning. Son of AB *TH. From tomorrow onwards, we will officially teach you the art of cultivation. Today all of you can first. Lone Moon was just about to make arrangements for their accommodations. Immortal elder. A child on the right suddenly cried out. With a plop, he knelt down in front of Lone Moon. Immortal elder, please save my younger sister. As long as you can save her, I will do anything you want me to do. With that said, he began to kowtow to Lone Moon. Beside him was a little girl who seemed to be in a daze. She seemed to be unable to stand on her own, and was being supported by an adult girl beside her. Lone Moon looked questioningly at Fatty. Fatty hesitated for a moment. It was obvious that he did not know what was going on, but he added, this child's younger sister seems to be ill. He carried her on his back all the way up the immortal ascension ladder. Oh. Lone Moon looked at the child on the ground. Tell me, what exactly happened? Replying immortal elder. The little boy replied immediately. A few years ago, my younger sister was accidentally bitten by a monster. Since then she has been unable to walk. The villagers all said that she was an inauspicious person and would bring disaster. They chased us out. Immortal elder, you are an immortal. You must have a way to cure my younger sister, right? I beg you, please save her? You climbed the immortal ascension ladder just to cure her. Lone Moon glanced at the little girl and fixed his gaze on her legs. He could tell at one glance that her legs had been invaded by demonic aura. That was why they had become like this. However, it was not very serious. Yes, the little boy nodded vigorously. Then what if I let you choose between cultivation and curing your younger sister? Lo Moon asked. The little boy was stunned. He did not expect Lo Moon to say this. He turned back to look at the little girl behind him and gritted his teeth. I choose my younger sister. Immortal Elder, please grant me my wish. Lo Moon nodded. This was a good child. He stood up and walked to the little girl's side. He lifted his hand and dispelled the demonic aura on her legs. The little girl hesitated. Suddenly, she felt that her legs had regained strength. She subconsciously stood up straight. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Brother, I can walk now. The little boy was ecstatic. He immediately pulled his younger sister to kneel down with him. Thank you, Immortal Elder. Thank you, Immortal Elder. There's no need. Lo Moon reached out to support him. You're so young. For you to go so far for your loved ones, you can be considered. He had wanted to praise him, but he suddenly felt something strange in his hand. Alarmed, he pulled the little boy up and examined him carefully. He even released a wisp of sword chi. Indeed, in a short while, he felt a tiny trace of sword chi rebound from his body. Holy shit, an innate sword embodiment. He actually had the same constitution as Chef. This was an innate sword cultivator's constitution, the kind that would not go astray. He immediately pulled the little boy back and said seriously, I've decided to take you in as my disciple. Come call me master. With that said, he shot a look at the master and disciple behind him. Shening. I Ching. Fatty. Didn't you say you wouldn't take in disciples? Fatty felt bitter. Lo Moon did not expect that he would meet an innate sword embodiment just by doing some advertisement. Thinking of the teaching history that he had been through, his stomach filled with bitterness. Forget about the body cultivators in the sect. The only one who taught diligently Fatty was an innate sword cultivator. This innate sword embodiment was practically here to save his worldview. Lo Moon finally saw some light at the end of the road for sword cultivators. Chapter 514. Lo Moon immediately accepted a disciple and insisted that he would completely isolate Xin Ying's negative influence. He taught her step by step. Even Chef was isolated. He didn't believe he couldn't teach a pure sword cultivator. Lo Moon even specially gave him a Taoist name, Jianxing. It meant the prosperity of the sword cultivator business. Anyway, these people were going to go out in the future and establish their own sections. By then, he would establish a sword cultivator sect. Just thinking about it made him happy. So he taught even more energetically, from basic swordsmanship to guiding qi into the body. He was unprecedentedly serious. And Jianxing was indeed smart. Among everyone, he was the first to succeed in guiding qi into the body. As for the others, the introductory teaching was basically handed over to Fatty. Lo Moon only occasionally gave them a few pointers. In addition, apart from being handicapped in swordsmanship, Fatty was an all-rounder in all other aspects. There was basically no problem teaching him. Among them, none of them had natural sword embodiment. Most of them were average, including Jianxing's sister, Jilin, who had 4 spirit roots. But fortunately, their comprehension was acceptable. Although they couldn't cultivate to become mighty figures, they could still establish their own sects and be teachers of Tao. In addition, this plane had just been born. It was a good time for cultivation. As long as they didn't slack off, it wasn't very difficult to become immortal. Fatty was obviously much more reliable than Lo Moon, who had fallen into the sword cultivator syndrome. After observing everyone's preferences for a few months, he began to teach them in a targeted manner. Only when there was a problem with swordsmanship would he ask I Ching to come out and help out. So everyone in the sect threw themselves into the business of cultivation, except Shening. As a 10,000-year-old mascot, Shen Ying's contribution to the sect had always been only one mission, watering. In the past, with Radish around, she had to go to the back mountain to water it every day. Now that Radish was replaced by mushrooms, She had to water the mushrooms planted by the squirrel demon every day. Perhaps because of a fruit from before, the squirrel had a good impression of Shening. In addition, the immortal meridian on this mountain happened to be planted in the back mountain. The squirrel had to plant mushrooms near the immortal meridian every day to completely convert the immortal chi into spirit chi. The general process was for the squirrel to plant in front, and she to water in the back. After planting, she nibbled on her fruit, and he ate his pine nuts. It was a tacit understanding. Greetings, immortals. While the two of them were eating, a young girl's voice came from behind them. They turned around and saw a girl in white bowing to them. She was a little short, and looked to be around 10 years old. Her face was very delicate, and it could be seen that she would grow up to be graceful. Mushroom was familiar with Fatty and recognized that this girl was the disciple that Lone Moon had taken in, Jian Xing's younger sister. Her name seemed to be Jilin. He immediately jumped down from the rock and shook his hand in a panic. I'm not some exalted immortal. You can just call me Mushroom. It had just gained sentience not long ago, and had never had a name. Shening called it Mushroom, so it decided to call it Mushroom. Sister Mushroom. Jilin readily accepted her advice and called out sweetly. She turned to look at the person on the rock and asked, How should I address this sister? Shening paused for a moment before replying, Shening. Sister Shen. Jilin called out as well. She looked at her a few times curiously before saying, Exalted Guru Hui asked me to come to the back of the mountain to pick some spirit herbs for refining elixirs. I wonder if the two of you can. Go ahead, go ahead. Mushroom waved her hand generously. Since Hui Zhe ordered you to, just go ahead and pick. Thank you, sisters. Her smile became even sweeter. She nodded at the two of them and turned to walk towards the spirit herbs on the ground. She began to pick the spirit herbs she needed seriously. Mushroom could not help but look at her curiously. She was a demon and most humans were afraid of demons. So even though Fatty had explained that she was just a good demon who had just started cultivating, these disciples would still subconsciously stay away from her. So she could only follow Shening to plant mushrooms. Jilin was the first among the 9 to take the initiative to talk to her. She could not help but feel a little happy and looked at her a few more times. But she realized that the more she picked, the closer she was to the edge of the immortal meridian. Mushroom panicked and immediately reminded her, Wait, you can't pick those mushrooms. Jilin paused and then retracted her hand. She turned back and smiled. Sorry, Sister Mushroom. I thought they were spirit herbs too. It's all right. Mushroom did not mind. Shening, who was at the side, jumped down from the rock and dusted her butt. I'm done watering them. Mushroom, I'm going back to eat. Oh, okay. Mushroom nodded and smiled at Jilin again before following her. I'm going to look for Huizhe too. Goodbye, sisters. Jilin also waved at Mushroom politely, but her gaze landed on Shening at the side again. They did not know before they started cultivating. They thought that she was a great immortal guru like the other 3. But after they guided the chi into her body, they realized that this Shening did not have any immortal chi. However, the High Masters had a very special attitude towards her, especially Guru I Ching, who would occasionally come to give them pointers. He was almost inseparable from her. So they became even more curious. But she did not seem to like to talk much. Jilin took a closer look. Something flashed in her eyes. Then she turned back and continued to pick the spirit herbs. Perhaps because he was addicted to teaching disciples, Lone Moon did not come to the rear hall to fight for food with Shening recently. Without the control of the elders, Shening completely let herself go. She finally lived a few years of eating and sleeping, eating and drinking without anyone caring about her. And the 9 disciples who accompanied her as immortal cultivators also improved very quickly in their cultivation. In just a few years, they were almost at foundation establishment. Jian Xing even reached the late stage of foundation establishment. He was just 1 step away from core formation. Lone Moon estimated the time. It was time for them to go out and gain some practical experience. But, me? Shening paused. Yes, you and Fatty bring them there together, Lone Moon said seriously. Why? Why her? There are two more races fighting on the divine race's side. And it's near Purple Night Palace. Lone Moon frowned. There are a bunch of people who have not woken up yet. Hong Meng called us back urgently to catch them and bring them back for lessons. Chef was in charge of catching, he was in charge of teaching. Oh, the place I chose for training happens to be near the segregated area by the sea. Although with Fatty's cultivation, there is no danger. But after all, the rules of this plane have not been formed yet. And these disciples are going out for the first time. You go just in case. Chapter 5:15. Lone Moon continued. Don't worry, we'll be back in no time. Anyway, you just have to follow along. Unless it's absolutely necessary. There's Fatty to take care of everything else. Sigh, so troublesome. Troublesome my ass. You're a manager after all. Can't you have some self-awareness of your position? Lone Moon stuffed a bag into her hands. Here. This is the food chef prepared for you for these few days. Let's go quickly. With that said, without waiting for Chef who was washing the vegetables to return, he pushed Shen Ying onto the departing pirate ship. Oh no, the spirit ship. Shen Ying, Miss Shun. Fatty immediately waved at her. Perhaps because she was too much of a homebody. The 9 disciples in the sect only saw her once on the day they entered the sect, so they all turned to look at her curiously. The group of children back then had all grown up into young men and women. Shen Ying lifted the bag in her hands. It seemed to be quite heavy, before walking towards Fatty. The place Lone Moon chose, to be precise, was outside the isolation zone of the human race, on a huge island. There were spirit herbs everywhere, and no one had set foot on it for a long time. In addition, there were all kinds of demon beasts that had not developed intelligence, and all kinds of sounds could be heard from afar. It was indeed a good place for training. Fatty steered the spirit ship to land on a flat piece of land. This was the edge of the island, and it was relatively safe. But there were also spirit herbs everywhere. The eyes of the 2 disciples who specialized in alchemy lit up. Fatty released his divine perception and scanned for a while before letting the disciples go out. Since it was their training, Fatty did not care much. He just let them decide which direction to go. The one with the highest cultivation among the 9 was Jian Xing, and he was also Lone Moon's in-house disciple, so the others seemed to see him as the leader. After picking a few spirit herbs, the few of them finally decided to head towards the center of the island. Fatty and Shen Ying followed far behind. The island was filled with all kinds of spirit herbs and all kinds of cultivation materials. There was much more variety than in the sect. The disciples who rarely came out naturally would not let go of this opportunity, so most of the time was spent on collecting these materials. Among them, they also encountered sudden attacks from demon beasts, but they were not very powerful, and the few of them could deal with them together. Although some people were injured, they were more scared than hurt, and continued to push forward. Perhaps it was the novelty of coming out for experience for the first time. These disciples were full of energy. In just a few days, they had already traveled a long distance. However, he had to stop once a day in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And it was Fatty who forced them to stop, for no other reason than, it was time for Shen Ying to eat. Fatty knew how punctual Shen Ying's mealtime was. Basically, it would not change. These disciples had already abstained from eating, so they didn't need to eat. In addition, there were only a few of them, so they naturally couldn't split up. Thus, they could only stop and wait. At the start, the disciples were busy gathering all kinds of spirit herbs and materials, so they didn't think much of it. But slowly, what needed to be harvested and what needed to be collected was more or less done. Everyone still had to stop and wait for her to finish eating every day, so they could not help but have some opinions about this. Their faces were faintly filled with dissatisfaction, especially a few of the younger ones, who looked at Shen Ying with hidden anger in their eyes. Shen Ying, on the other hand, did not react at all. It was as if she could not feel the resentment of the crowd. She continued to eat her food like a whirlwind. She even raised her head to look at Fatty, then kindly handed him a bowl of plain rice. Here. The corner of Fatty's mouth twitched. Instantly, He thought of those days where he ate plain rice. It's all right, Miss Shen. I've already succeeded in abstaining from eating. Don't tempt me. Oh. Shenning took back the rice she had just refilled and took a bite. I was just asking. So you didn't even want to give it to me? Fatty frowned. He turned back to look at the 9 disciples waiting at the side. He had taught these people for so many years, so he could naturally guess what they were thinking. Thus he explained, Master has instructed that during this experiential training, we must not disturb Miss Shen while she eats and sleeps. Especially when she sleeps. Although he did not understand why Master emphasized on sleeping, he still patiently advised, cultivation is not something that can be achieved in a day. The main purpose of this tribulation is to train your state of mind. You must remember this. The few of them were stunned for a moment. Their expressions changed. Especially the older ones. They immediately reacted and no longer looked as impatient as before. But there were still a few who were indignant. When they entered the sect, they were not old to begin with. They had not experienced much. After these few years of cultivation, they were only in their teens. They became cultivators above mortals in one leap. Their state of mind had become too arrogant. Although they did not dare to say anything due to Lonman's instructions, they still blamed Shening for delaying their time. They continued walking like this for a few days. After stopping to eat once again, a female disciple finally could not take it anymore. She walked over with a bottle of elixirs and said with some anger, Here, this is an abstinence pill. Shening paused and turned to look at her. Chapter 516. Everyone then cupped their fists and nodded, replying in unison, Yes, exalted master. Ziyu also retreated, but there was still resentment in her eyes. Shening didn't care. She just continued to eat her meal. Then, she quietly extended the time for her meal from the usual 1 hour to 2 hours. And she even took out a few plates of pastries from time to time, eating as she walked. She even specially chose those that were fragrant and crispy. Crunch and a wave of fragrance wafted out, crunch and another wave of fragrance wafted out. It was so enticing that those disciples who claimed to be fasting in front couldn't help but turn back to look. There were even a few more demon beasts that appeared. Fatty, who was the closest. Fatty felt bitter, but he couldn't eat, so he silently chanted the clear heart incantation along the way. This situation lasted for a few days, until she finished all the pastries in the bag. Then she changed back to fruits. At this time, the few of them had already completely entered the depths of the forest. They even encountered 5th-level demon beasts. This was already equivalent to Golden Core stage demon beasts. The 9 of them were all injured to varying degrees. They didn't know if Fatty was really angered by them provoking Shening to eat several times, but he didn't attack. In the end, it was Jian Xing who had the highest cultivation who held back the demon beasts, and the few of them escaped together. This was the first time they faced such a dangerous situation. There was no longer the arrogant expression on their faces like when they first came here. Instead, there was a hint of fear. All of them had ugly expressions. After escaping danger, they chose a hidden place to rest and began to treat the injured. The injuries they suffered this time were many times more than before. 7 of the 9 were injured. Even Jian Xing, who was in the late stages of sword establishment, had a cut on his hand, deep to the bone. Fatty hesitated for a moment, but still didn't help them. To cultivators, this bit of injury was actually nothing much. Only one of them hurt his meridians, but the situation wasn't critical. He would be fine after slowly recuperating when he returned. Plus the tribulation wasn't over yet. So he only stood far away. Shening, who was beside him, also munched on her fruit calmly. Sister Shun, are you eating the red spirit fruit? Suddenly, a light voice sounded. The green-robed girl among the 9 was looking at the fruit in her hand with sparkling eyes. Shening tilted her head and replied, I guess so. Chef planted them anyway. She only cared about eating them. It is indeed the red spirit fruit. Fatty took a look and nodded in affirmation. The girl's expression became even more pleasantly surprised. Rumor has it that the red spirit fruit is a rare spirit fruit. It blooms for 100 years and bears fruit for 100 years. It can also cure hundreds of poisons, heal meridians, and strengthen divine sense. Shenning took another bite and replied, "Oh." The girl froze for a moment, thinking that Shenning did not understand, so she bowed respectfully and said, "Sister Shen, I wonder if you still remember me. I am Jilin. I met you a few years ago at the back of the mountain." "I don't remember," Shenning answered directly. Jilin's expression stiffened, as if she had been slapped in the face, but she still maintained her kind smile and said, "Sister Shen, senior brother Qingdong is seriously injured, and his meridians are even injured. Our cultivation levels are low, so we can't heal him. Coincidentally, you have this red spirit fruit. Can you? She did not continue, and only stared at the fruit in her hand. Shenning did not reply, but took another big bite. "Can I what?" As if she did not hear the meaning of her words at all. Jilin's expression stiffened even more, and she could only grit her teeth and continue. "Can you give this fruit in your hand to senior brother Qingdong to heal?" "Oh," Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. "You want my fruit?" "It's senior brother Qingdong who needs it. His injuries are serious and cannot be delayed. Sister Shen, please give him a red spirit fruit on account that we are from the same sect." Jilin said worriedly. Even the people who were healing over there all looked over. Especially the injured disciple, his eyes were filled with gratitude. Shenning tilted her head, and then took out 7 to 8 red fruits from the bag. "Is this it?" Jilin's eyes lit up, and she nodded vigorously. Yes, this is it." With that said, she reached out to take it. "Thank." Before she could finish, Shenning retracted her hand, causing her to grab empty air. Suddenly, she revealed a radiant smile at her. "Haha, I'm not giving it." With that said, she even picked one up and took a bite, then put it down right in front of her, then picked up another and took a bite, then put it down again, until she had bitten all of them once. Instantly, there was only the sound of her crunching and chewing left. Jilin, Fatty, everyone's faces darkened. "You're too much." Ziyu walked over angrily, as if she could not hold it in anymore. She pointed at Shenning and said loudly, "Never mind that you've been holding us back along the way. Now that Qingdong is already so seriously injured, you're actually not even willing to give a fruit. And you're simply rotten to the core." Ziyu, Fatty, who was stunned by Shen Ying's coquettish actions, finally regained his senses. "Don't be rude. I didn't say anything wrong." She seemed to be so angry that she started criticizing without a care. "She's been holding us back all along, and even teasing little sister Jilin just now? No matter how high her cultivation is, she can't bully others like that." "That's right." Perhaps because someone spoke up, the other disciples who were recuperating also spoke up. "It's just a fruit. She clearly has so many, but she's not willing to take any out." "That's right, we're from the same sect after all. Why is she so heartless? Never mind that she didn't do anything along the way. She's even been eating and making noises that disturb us." "That's right, who knows? That high-level demon beast might have been lured out by the sounds of her eating." The more everyone spoke, the more agitated they became. Apart from a few older people who looked troubled and did not utter a word, only Jianxing did not speak, but his brows were also tightly knitted. Jilin, on the other hand, spoke words of persuasion with a face full of anxiety, but there was a faint hint of something else in her words. "Everyone is mistaken. Big Sister Shen doesn't mean that. She's not targeting me on purpose." Hence, the more she persuaded, the more agitated everyone became, as if all the emotions that had been accumulated for many days were all unleashed. Insolence. Until Fatty could no longer hold it in and released his suppression. Only then did everyone fall silent. One by one, they were forced to kneel down. Fatty was really angry. Where did these people get their sense of righteousness from? The fruit is Miss Shen's to begin with. It's up to her whether to give it or not. Giving it to you is a favor. Not giving it is a duty. Where did you get the face to think that she must take it out to you?" He swept a glance at everyone. The more he looked, the angrier he got. "Moreover, this is your training. Miss Shen and I are just guides and guards. Sooner or later, you will also experience true danger. Now you can't even take this little injury. When that time comes, where are you going to find Miss Shun and force her to give you the fruit? Chapter 517. After being reprimanded by Fatty, everyone lowered their heads, but the dissatisfaction in their eyes did not fade. Fatty clearly did not have the brainwashing eloquence of Rabbit. Ziyu could not help but mutter softly, "But there's no need for her to treat little sister Jilin like this." Ziyu. But she looked up directly, still looking dissatisfied. "It's clearly enough for Master Huizhe to bring us alone. There's no need for her to come at all." Instead dragging them down. Huizhe was just about to step forward. "Fatty." Shunning suddenly spoke up, turning to look at him, her face completely devoid of anger from being offended by everyone. Instead she tilted her head and said seriously, "Your teaching standards are much worse than Father Nyo's? Even my popularity has dropped." The Rainbow Girls of Invincible Sect were much cuter. At least they were all giving her fruits, not snatching them away. "Huh?" Fatty faltered, not understanding what she meant. But Shunning stepped forward directly, squatting down to look at this Ziyu on the ground, supporting her head with one hand and asked, "Say girl, do you really think that without me around, your experience will be more successful?" Being asked so seriously, Ziyu was instead stunned for a moment. A trace of guilt flashed across her eyes, but she still nodded stubbornly and said, "That's right. You all think so too?" She looked at the other 8 people. Those few glanced at her. Some nodded unhappily, some just kept quiet. Only 3 older ones seemed to want to say something, but moved their mouths but did not speak in the end. "All right." Shunning nodded with a good temper, even smiling at her. "Then I'll listen to you. I won't care anymore." Ziyu faltered. What did she mean, don't care anymore? Fatty also panicked for no reason. He had a bad premonition. Miss Shun?" But Shunning had already stood up. Just as she was about to turn, she thought of something. "Oh right, let me give you a piece of advice." She turned back and added to Ziyu, "People who are stupid will die." What did she mean? Was she scolding her? Before she could think clearly, in the next moment, everyone present, including Fatty, it was obvious that something invisible had suddenly retracted from them, as if a large net that had been spread open was suddenly retracted. Immediately after, roar! A series of deafening roars came from all directions, rising and falling continuously. It was as if the entire forest had woken up. Countless auras of demonic beasts rushed over from all directions. The roars of the beasts were accompanied by a faint pressure. The 9 people spat out blood on the spot. Their faces turned pale, and their eyes widened in shock. What were those? Fatty only felt his heart thump, and his entire heart sank. This was the voice of a high-level demonic beast. No. There were also immortal, and even God-ranked ones rushing over. He finally understood. Just now, he clearly felt the aura of a high-level demonic beast beside him. However, those who jumped out and appeared in front of everyone were all low-level ones. Was this all because of Miss Shin? She had placed something around them that even he couldn't detect, so the demonic beasts didn't notice them. But now it was gone. Therefore, all the demonic beasts had discovered them. Die, 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 die. Fatty was about to cry. With these Foundation establishment rookies, any high-level demonic beast that came would be able to kill them all with one slap. Although he wasn't afraid and could block them, he couldn't block 9 burdens. Quick! Fatty immediately set up an array to relieve the pressure on everyone. He shouted, "Run! Quickly run in the direction they came from, to the seaside." When they heard that, they didn't have time to think about what was going on. They climbed up in panic and turned to run in the direction of the entrance. Some even forgot to fly on their swords. Move together, don't split up. Fatty couldn't help but remind those who ran fast. Unfortunately, the huge fear took over. They only cared about running forward. Fatty had no choice but to carry them back and protect them all the way to the seaside. Behind them, there was a dense group of high-level demonic beasts. What was going on? 3 days later, in the main hall, The corner of Lonlin's mouth twitched as he glanced at the heavily injured disciples lying on the ground. Some had their meridians broken, some had their lungs injured, some had their cultivation reduced to the qi refinement stage. All of them were in a sorry state, looking like they were still in shock. Even Jianxing's body was full of wounds. He seemed to be unable to stand steadily, and knelt on one knee. What happened? It was just an ordinary tribulation. How did it become like this in the blink of an eye? Was this the prelude to being annihilated? Fatty was just about to speak when Jianxing said first, "Master, it's our lack of skills. We couldn't beat those demonic beasts. That's why we were seriously injured. Master, please punish us." "All of you were injured by demonic beasts?" Lone Moon frowned, and turned to look at Fatty, who was also in a sorry state. "Fatty, didn't you follow us all the way? Why did it become like this?" "Master." Fatty's face was full of guilt. There were really too many demonic beasts. There were immortal beasts and divine beings among them. I couldn't take care of all of them. "Shining, what about you?" He looked at the only uninjured person who was taking out a fruit that had already taken a bite out of it. He had seen before that the demonic beasts on the periphery of the island were all low level. They couldn't have courted death by going deep into the island, could they? Besides, even if Fatty couldn't take care of all of them, he didn't know how to cheat. "I'm off work," Shining replied seriously. "What got off work?" Lone Moon was just about to ask, when a severely injured disciple struggled to answer first. "Exalted Master, our injuries were all caused by her." The one who spoke was the disciple named Cheng Dong, who was injured by the 6th level demonic beast at the beginning. Since he was already injured, Fatty naturally paid more attention when they retreated, so he was the one with the least injuries among the 9. Lone Moon's expression darkened instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly. Instantly, he had the illusion that a storm was brewing. "Who did you say caused us?" "Try saying that again." "It's her." Cheng Dong didn't notice his expression. He reached out and pointed at Shining. His face was full of resentment. Originally, the forest was very safe. There weren't that many high-level demonic beasts. I don't know what she did. She suddenly attracted a herd of beasts. "It's her. She called the demonic beasts out to bite us." "Huh." Lone Moon laughed even colder. "According to you, she has the ability to command demonic beasts?" "It must be her," Cheng Dong said with a face full of certainty. "Otherwise, why would there suddenly be so many demonic beasts? And there are so many of us. She's the only one who isn't injured. Those demonic beasts didn't even attack her. She must be in cahoots with those demonic beasts. Ridiculous." "Master." Fatty was just about to say something when Lone Moon raised his hand to stop him. "Let him continue." Chapter 518. Exalted Master. The more Cheng Dong spoke, the more resentful he became. "I was already injured then." Junior sister Ji Lin asked her for help. Not only did she not help, she even teased her. She even threatened her. Then many demon beasts suddenly appeared from the forest. And he turned to look at Fatty, gritted his teeth and said with a look of desperation, "And Exalted Master Huizhe, he had been siding with that bad person along the way. He did not listen to our explanations at all. That's why we were injured so badly." "Oh." Lone Moon's expression became calmer. "So, you think that all of you were injured, it was all Xin Ying's fault?" Cheng Dong did not answer, but the anger on his face grew. It was obvious that he thought so. Lone Moon turned to look at the other disciples. "What about you?" The other 8 looked at each other, seeming hesitant. He added, "It's all right, speak honestly. Those who think the same as Cheng Dong, stand up. I can prove that what senior brother Cheng Dong said is true." Ziyu was the first to stand up. She even took 2 steps towards Cheng Dong despite her injuries, glared at Shining and said, "She's the one who caused us to end up like this." Cheng Dong's eyes flashed with a trace of emotion. His gaze became even more righteous. Perhaps because there was someone taking the lead, the remaining disciples all raised their hands. In the end, half of them actually agreed with Cheng Dong's words. The remaining 3 who were the oldest, Jianxing who had been kneeling on the ground, and Ji Lin, who was supporting him, did not raise their hands. The fan in Lomun's hand creaked. He took a deep breath to suppress the irritation in his heart. His gaze became even colder. After a while, he looked at the remaining 5 and said, "Why didn't you raise your hands? Do you think they are lying?" The 3 were stunned, not knowing how to answer for a moment. After a while, it was Ji Lin who spoke, reporting to Exalted Master, "I think Sister Shen does not seem to be such a bad person, although previously, I believe she would not do such a thing to harm her fellow disciples and cause them to die." With that said, she looked hopefully at Shening, who was completely out of the situation. "There may be other reasons for this. Junior Sister Ji Lin." Chung Dong sighed, his eyes filled with heartache for her. "She caused you to end up like this. Why are you still speaking up for her?" The other people who raised their hands had the same expression, but their hatred for Shening grew. Lone Moon scanned these people from head to toe. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face. He asked, enunciating each word, "Then what do you think the punishment for such a serious crime should be?" Everyone looked at each other for a while. In the end, it was Chung Dong who said angrily, "For a person like her, it wouldn't be too much even if her cultivation was crippled, and she was expelled from the sect." The others nodded in agreement. "All right." Lone Moon closed his eyes. He really could not continue asking. He directly stood up and said to Huizhe, "Fatty, heal their injuries first." "Yes, master." Fatty looked at everyone, shook his head and sighed. Only then did he form a hand seal, and a large-scale rejuvenation array appeared beneath everyone's feet. Everyone who was originally in a sorry state felt their bodies relax, and the wounds on their bodies healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while their external wounds were as good as new. Fatty took out another bottle of pills and handed it to the nearest disciple, asking him to distribute them to everyone. "Eat this, and within 3 days, your meridians will recover." Everyone was overjoyed. They hurriedly distributed the pills and ate them. Indeed, the remaining internal injuries were greatly alleviated. They had already stood up and bowed in Lone Moon's direction. "Thank you, Exalted Master Lone Moon." "No need to thank me." Lone Moon smiled at them, but the smile did not reach his eyes at all. "Although your injuries have healed, let's talk about the punishment next." The few of them were stunned, especially the 4 who had just pointed out Shening. Their eyes all lit up. "As you wish," Lone Moon said word by word. "I will expel you from the sect. From today onwards, the 4 of you are no longer disciples of the sect." "What?" The 4 of them were shocked, thinking that they had heard wrongly. "Fatty," Lone Moon ordered directly, "cripple their cultivation and send them down the mountain." "Yes, master." "Wait," Chung Dong exclaimed, his eyes filled with fear and disbelief. "Why us? The one who did the wrong thing isn't." Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon could not help but wave his hand. Instantly, a ray of sword chi flew towards him and hit his dantian. Chung Dong only felt a huge pain. All the spirit chi in his body dissipated. He cried out directly, "Ah!" He fell to the ground again and started rolling. "After cultivating for so many years, how did you cultivate such a group of idiots?" Lone Moon finally could not take it anymore. He slammed the table and stood up. He seemed to be so angry that his whole body was releasing cold air. In an instant, the table and chair beside him turned into ashes. Shening finally raised her head. "Father Neo, the table is 100 spirit stones." "Shut up." "Oh." Lone Moon then turned his head and continued to rage. "It's fine that you are stupid, but you still think so highly of yourselves and are ungrateful. Who was the blind one in the beginning to take in a group of trash like you?" "The blind fatty." "Air. It was me." Fatty directly knelt down. "Please forgive me, master." He felt bitter in his heart. The other disciples also knelt down one by one. Their eyes were filled with fear at Lone Moon's sudden anger, but they still looked a little lost. "Do you still not know where you are wrong?" Lone Moon glanced at the few of them. "What kind of place is that island? With your trash foundation establishment cultivation, can you go deep into the forest? Or do you think that there are only low-level demon beasts on such a big island?" He took a deep breath and then said word by word, Fatty protected you out, but you can still be injured to this extent. How did you get in? Don't you have any F***king idea? Everyone's heart sank, as if they had never thought of this at all. They all looked up at Shen Ying in disbelief. It was her? How could this be possible? She looked like she had no cultivation at all. But when they entered, there was indeed no problem at all. Later there were so many demon beasts. Could it be because they angered her? Our invincible sect cannot tolerate idiots like you. Exalted Master. Only then did everyone know fear, and began to desperately beg for mercy. Please forgive us, Exalted Master. We know we are wrong. They had seen the power of a cultivator. How could they be willing to return to being ordinary? Fatty, bring them down the mountain. Lone Moon did not have the slightest intention of changing his mind. The entire invincible sect did not let Shen Ying suffer the slightest bit. What right did these immature people have to do this? Fatty actually did not have the heart to do this. After all, he had taught them for so many years. But he also understood that they only had themselves to blame. Yes, Master. He directly produced 3 wisps of immortal qi, and dispersed the spirit qi in their dantian. He pulled the few who were still crying out and walked out. Wait a minute. Shen Ying suddenly spoke. Chapter 519. Shen Ying. Lone Moon glared at her. Don't be so kind-hearted. I just wanted to remind you that you missed one. Shen Ying took a bite of her fruit, then turned to point at Jilin. Jilin paled instantly, her face full of disbelief. Big sister Shen. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked like she was about to cry. Actually, Shen Ying tilted her head. Still looking lazy, her eyes narrowed. I quite like white lotuses, just not the black-hearted ones. Lone Moon frowned. Fatty, bring her down too. Yes, Master. Fatty could only come back to pull her. No, I don't want to go down the mountain. Jilin really panicked this time, her tears flowed down. Exalted Master. Brother, help me. She hurriedly pulled Jianxing, who was beside her. Jianxing's face was also full of anxiety. He knelt down and begged. Master, little Lin didn't do anything wrong. Why do you have to expel her too? She was his sister after all. Before Lone Moon could speak, Shen Ying suddenly walked over, took out a familiar-looking bottle, and handed it to Jilin. Here, I picked it up. I'll return it to you. That was a bottle of fasting pills. Coincidentally the one that Ziyu gave to Shen Ying. Jilin paled instantly. Even her grip on Jianxing's hand loosened. She looked at the bottle in disbelief. She knew everything. Fatty was also stunned when he saw that bottle. She was the one who instructed Ziyu to help Shen Ying abstain from food. Thinking about it, Ziyu was not a pill cultivator, Jilin was. Instantly, his expression darkened. He directly dispersed her cultivation and pulled her out. Oh yes. Seeing that Fatty was about to carry the 5 people out, Lone Moon suddenly added, I seem to have forgotten to tell you, Shen Ying. She is the sect master of our sect. Now, not only the 5 disciples who were chased down the mountain, even the remaining 4 people widened their eyes, looking at Shen Ying in disbelief. She was actually the sect master. Shen Ying. Was Father Niu pushing the blame back? MMP. Master. Jianxing looked at Lone Moon anxiously. I know what you want to say. Lone Moon stopped him from speaking. He turned to look at the remaining 3 disciples and said in a low voice, I'm teaching you cultivation, because I really hope that you'll be successful in the future. I hope that you'll be able to pass on the art of cultivation to more people. I hope that you'll be able to protect the world and lessen the number of disasters. But I hope that all of you remember that I chose you because you happen to appear, not because you are irreplaceable. The few of them were shocked. Their expressions changed and they lowered their heads. Even Jianxing put down his cupped fists. Lone Moon looked at the few people who were being brought down the mountain and narrowed his eyes. You should be glad that Chef I Ching is not here today. Otherwise, not only the few of them, but all of you can forget about leaving the mountain alive. Daring to provoke a cheat. Did they really think that everyone was Xinjing? It was another watering day. Shen Ying, is it really okay not to water them today? Mushroom glanced at the row of wilted mushrooms beside the immortal meridian and asked worriedly, I haven't eaten, so I don't have the strength to water them. Shining leaned against the rock like mud and nibbled on a fruit. I don't know when Chef will be back either. Father Neo said that Chef went to help Rabbit hold the fort and supervise the second batch of students at the Purple Night Palace. He would only return after a period of time, when Rabbit's brainwashing was complete. But didn't Great Immortal Lone Moon go to cook for you? The corner of Xin Ying's mouth twitched. She looked at Mushroom, not knowing what to say. Sigh, you don't understand. She would rather eat snacks every day than eat pig's swill. Do you want fruits? She handed one over. Mushroom's eyes brightened. He nodded hard and took it. Xining, you're the best person in the world. Mushroom gave her a good person card with an innocent look. You're the only person apart from Little Flower who gives me food. Fatty doesn't give it to you? Xining couldn't help but ask. Don't the two of you hang out often? Mushroom shook his head and pouted a little angrily. He only gives me carrots and told me to abstain from eating. Rabbit was indeed Fatty's true love. You're still the best. Mushroom's eyes shone as he looked at her. Just that. Why are the fruits you gave me these few days all bitten? Xining stiffened. Don't mind such details. Oh. Mushroom didn't ask any more. He thought for a while and added. Huizhe has been in a bad mood recently. He doesn't even accompany me to plant mushrooms anymore. I'm so bored by myself. What's wrong with him? Xining asked. He said he doesn't know how to teach disciples anymore. He's worried about what to do in the future. Oh. It's been so quiet here recently. Many people have disappeared. That little sister who gathered herbs last time is gone too. Mushroom said as he chewed on his fruit. You like her a lot? Xining turned around. She thought for a while before nodding. She's the only one who would talk to me out of those few people. I should like her, right? It frowned, as if he didn't understand. But Huizhe told me to stay away from her. I don't know why either. She's clearly gone. Why do you want me to stay away? Oh. Xining continued to nibble on her fruit. Oh right, Xining. Mushroom tugged at her hand and pointed at the big tree in front. Do you owe that person a lot of fruits? Xining took a look and saw a person standing under the tree, looking straight at them. He looked familiar. It seemed to be the disciple with the natural sword embodiment that Father Neo had been talking about all day and showing off in front of Chef. She had forgotten her name. Am I the kind of person who would owe a debt? A daughter's debt should be paid by the father. Even if someone owed someone, it should be Father Neo. But he's been there watching us for 4 hours. I see. Xin Ying's eyes narrowed. Then let's go back and watch. She couldn't lose out. Sure. Pure Mushroom nodded vigorously. Hence, 2 pairs of eyes fixed on the person under the tree. As they stared, they didn't forget to nibble on their fruit. For a moment, the entire back mountain was filled with the sound of crunching. Jianxing stiffened for a moment. He held on for less than 10 seconds before shifting his gaze away awkwardly. Instantly, he felt that his actions were extremely stupid. But he also had an inexplicable feeling that he had lost. He coughed, frowned, and retracted his gaze. Then, with a cold expression, he walked over and stopped in front of the two. He cupped his fists and bowed respectfully towards Xining. Greetings, Sect Master. His gaze swept past Mushroom at the side. Xining answered lazily. He clenched his fists by his side and took a deep breath. Jianxing is here this time to ask for forgiveness from Sect Master on behalf of my sister. I hope that Sect Master can forgive her previous rude offense on account of her young age. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.